Welcome to my channel, where mysteries unfold, strange tales come to life, and the unexplained takes center stage. Here, we dive deep into eerie legends, unsolved cases, and supernatural phenomena that defy logic. Are you ready to step into the unknown? Brace yourself, keep an open mind, and join us as we uncover the world's greatest mysteries. Please listen to the story Message Through the Board. This story happened in 2014 in Marietta, California. I worked at a grocery store. A couple of my co-workers had gone to this old mining town, near Joshua Tree then to these old gold mines. They brought a Ouija board with them and were able to communicate with some miners that had passed in the area. At the time, I was very skeptical about these kinds of things. I was like, oh, if you guys are ever gonna do it again, I'd be really interested to see what that's like and experience that for myself. A couple weeks later, one of the girls that owned the Ouija board invited me to go with her to her grandmother's grave. We went to the cemetery around sunset and set up a blanket. Just a nice little area on top of her grave. The girl that's grandmother's grave we were at, LED the whole thing. Me and one other girl were there as well. There were 3 of us total. We are sitting there. We all 3 had our fingers on the planchette. I had mine barely touching it, hovering it, 'cause I'm skeptical. We sign on the Ouija board. We go to say hello. That's what she told us we're supposed to do. You sign on, we go to say hello. She starts asking questions. Is there anyone here with us? We didn't really get any responses. The planche kept moving from T and to U. T to U. It kept going back and forth very slowly. That was the only response we got the whole time. We sat there for 30 minutes. Maybe an hour, just seeing if anything else would happen. Nothing else happened, so we gathered up our gear. They had the idea to go to this, what is referred to as the Haunted Mill. That's in Marietta. It's a spooky place that teenagers go at night, just to get spooked out. I had been a couple times to drive by, but they were like, let's go do the Ouija board over there. They thought we'd get some sort of response. We go over to the mill. It's pitch black out. The mill had been vandalized and broken into a lot over the years. There was a chain link fence and barbed wire on the top. We didn't bother going inside of it, but we thought just merely being in its vicinity was enough. We set up the Ouija board and a little blanket across the street. There was a dirt field across the street. It was just us, dirt field, and the mill. All 3 of us had her finger on the planche. We sign on to say hello. The girl who was leading asked if there was anybody with us. This time, the planche went to yes. She asked a few other questions. One of them was, what is your name? It started to spell my grandfather's name, which is not a common name in the States. The hairs on the back of my neck were standing up, and it started to spell my last name. My last name is Dutch and very hard to spell. Even people that have known me for years have a hard time spelling my last name. I immediately was going into fight or fight mode. I was really scared, I figured. The girls I was with probably didn't know my grandfather's name. At first, I thought they were pulling a prank on me or something. I looked at them and was like, oh, this is my grandfather's name that it just spelled. My friend continued to ask questions. She said, do you have something that you want to say to Molly? It went to yes again. What's your message from Molly? It spelled Getready. I said, get ready. She said, for what? It spelled DE. A TH death. I immediately was having an out-of-body experience. We signed off. My 2 friends were very scared. They grabbed their stuff, ran off to their car. I had been sitting crisscross, applesauce the whole time. I went to stand up. My legs were numb. I fell into this ditch that was there. I lost my car keys. Having a panic attack, I look up and my friends are at their cars. They're getting ready to go. I couldn't find my car keys, so I pull my phone out, get my flashlight. I'm looking for my keys. I finally find them. I run into my car and drive off and don't look back. We let each other know when we got home. Over the next couple of weeks, we were checking in with each other a lot to see how everyone was feeling. We were all really freaked out by it. In the months after that, even years, I have asked them repeatedly if they've ever had another experience like that, or if they were possibly playing a prank on me, and they've never owned up to it if they were. But that's something that has scared me. It's been almost 10 years. It's still something that I think about. From what I experienced, I don't think either of them messed with a Ouija board. Again, after that, the logical side of me wants to say that they were messing with me, but I think it would have been really hard for them to find my Dutch grandfather's name somewhere, and to know that that's something that would scare me. I went in with the title of a skeptic, and I feel like maybe I was targeted because of that. I would say, know what you're getting yourself into. Listen to stories like these before you do something like that. I haven't been to that specific area because I don't live there any longer, but I in general like abandoned places, spooky places. I actually told my dad the story within the last couple years. The grandfather mentioned in the story is my dad's dad. I never told him. I didn't want him to have a weird memory of his dad after hearing it, but I wanted to share it with him. He adamantly is like, my dad would never try to scare you like that, and would never tell you to get ready for death in a negative, scary way. If he had said that, he would have meant it, as in, live your life to the fullest. Always prepare, be prepared. That you don't always have the promise of tomorrow. That's giving me a piece about the story too. I don't think it was my grandfather. I never did research into this because I'm too scared. But one of my friends that I experienced this with, she had done some research into demons and spirits. She said there is a demon that will imitate relatives, with repeating letters, like we had experienced at the cemetery. If that's the case, I'm really glad we signed off when we did, and didn't do it again. This experience just gave me a really well-rounded view of this kind of thing. I don't consider myself a skeptic or a full believer. I put it into the category of something unexplained, something I might never know the answer to. Don't leave just yet. We have 3 stories today. Have you listened to them yet? They're up and available now as separate episodes. You can share your own story with me over on scarystory.com for a chance to have it featured on an upcoming episode, and to listen ad-free. Try out Scary Plus over on scaryplus.com. Completely free for 14 days. You can also find the button somewhere on your app right now. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. Please listen to the story, The Mistake of Never Saying Goodbye. Despite many warnings, Brooke and her friend decide to play with the Ouija board, a decision they would come to regret. My name is Edwin, and here is Brooke's true scary story. My name is Brooke. My first experience ever with the supernatural happened in Irvine, California at my grandma's house. My grandma still lives in the same house. She bought the house in the mid to late 50s. I was 6 or 7 years old. My mom and I were in the back room, watching Unsolved Mysteries. So it was pretty late at night. The TV was on. I was sitting on my bed. My mom was to the left of the TV doing her eyebrows. Very laid-back night watching the show together. All of a sudden, the sound in the room disappeared. There was no TV, no nothing. You could have heard a pin drop. I zoned out on the wall out of nowhere. This huge gust of wind blew all of my hair back. I look at the door to the bedroom. There is this huge shadow figure. No facial features, but it was the shape of a human. It was so tall, it almost surpassed the top of the door frame. After a few seconds goes by, it instantly realized that I had seen it. It turns and starts sprinting down the hallway. I jumped up from my bed, I run down the hallway and stop. I just knew not to follow it. All the way to the end of the hallway, out to the door. It makes it to the front door and it disappears. I'm standing completely confused. I go back to my room and it's as if nothing happened. My mom's still doing her eyebrows. The TV is still on. She didn't even ask me about what happened. So it was honestly as if time just stood still. From that point on, I would see things, hear things. We moved around quite a bit when I was growing up. And it didn't matter what house we were in. Something just chose to follow me. I would hear my name being called a lot of the time. It would either sound like my mom, or someone was trying to sound like my mom to get my attention. I would even hear my name in class in elementary school. And of course, as a little kid, you don't want to hear someone calling my name in the middle of class and draw attention to yourself. I didn't want anyone to think I was crazy, so I kept it to myself a lot of the time. But the experiences never went away. They slowed down once I hit my early teenage years, 11, 12, 13. But they never fully went away. Even to this day, I still experience a shift in the energy in the room and this overwhelming sense of dread. It didn't matter what house we were in. Sometimes it would happen during the day. A lot of times it was at night. Just this overwhelming sense of I'm not alone. Someone is watching me. Fast forward to middle school. I'm 12 years old. We're living in a townhome. Still in Irvine, but out of Grandma's house. Me, my mom and dad, my brother and sister. My parents decide that it's not working, and they tell us that they're getting a divorce. Dad moves out. He has his own place. That doesn't last long. And he ends up back at my grandma's. And he meets my stepmom. They get married. They have my youngest sister. And we move into a house in Northwood, not far from my grandma's house. At all this house. The first time that we did a walkthrough of that house, it didn't feel right to me. Downstairs, no problem. As soon as I went upstairs were my soon-to-be bedroom, my siblings' bedroom, and my dad and stepmom's bedroom was. I just had a feeling of I don't want to be here. This doesn't feel right. I ignored it. We move in. We're going back and forth, spending about half the week with my mom, half the week with my dad and stepmom. Nothing happened at first. It was a lot of feeling again. Dread every time I had to go up into their room, or even just walk past their room. I absolutely hated that feeling. I would ask someone to go up and close their bedroom door. I would avoid even looking down the hallway. If their door was open, it never gave me a good feeling. This was going on for a handful of months, and I felt very fortunate that we moved into the same neighborhood that my best friend at the time was living in. Her house was 2 streets up in the same exact neighborhood. We were spending the night at each other's houses. Every weekend we would alternate and meet at the corner. Okay, whose house are we spending the night at tonight? Few months goes by, I keep having these feelings. I can't shake them. And her and I are having a sleepover at her house. I'm telling her about all these things, how scary it is, and I wish I could figure out what was going on. She laughs and she goes, "Hold on. I have something I want to show you." She goes to her bedroom closet and she pulls out a Ouija board. I grew up in a very traditional Mexican household. Most of my family are believers. You don't mess with the supernatural, and you absolutely do not mess with Ouija boards, no matter what anyone tells you. It's not worth it. I always knew it was something you avoid, but we were teenagers. A few weeks later, it was my turn to host. Having her over, she brought the Ouija board with her. The light that I would use in my room had a dimmer setting. You could dim it almost all the way down to where it was almost like a very mild candlelight feel. We waited for everybody to go to bed and, of course, picked the absolute worst time. The witching hour, as they call it, to bust out this Ouija board. Her and I are sitting right across from each other. Our knees are almost touching. There's obviously space on either side of us. It's just her, and we have my light all the way on. We're sitting there, she takes it out, explains to me how it works. We both place our hands on the Ouija board. She's like, "Okay, what do you want to ask it first? Do you have an idea of what could be in the house? Is it an adult? Is it a child? I don't know. Let's just ask it if there's a ghost in our house." She says, "Okay." We put our hands on the Ouija board. She asks the question. The little piece starts moving. So of course I'm like, "Okay, you're moving it. This isn't really happening." She starts freaking out, and she's like, "No, I'm not moving it, I promise you. It keeps moving all the way to yes." I start panicking. I ask her to stop, and we sit there for a second. Clearly, there's something here. I'm not going crazy. What do I ask it now? She thinks about it for a second, and she goes, "Why don't you ask its name?" We put our hands back on. She asks the question. It slowly moves to GE as it's getting closer to the letter O. My lights dim by themselves. I start accusing her of moving it again, and she's like, "No, I promise you I'm not moving it." The lights dimmed on their own. It spells out Geo. George, maybe. We're trying to figure out what this name could be. Going back and forth, we're both a little scared. We put our hands back on the Ouija board. She asks the last question, halfway through it moving. The lights dim again. I feel this overwhelming sense of dread. That same feeling. Every time I walk past my dad and stepmom's room, before I can even say anything to her, there's this sensation between where her and I are sitting. We are not sitting alone. I could very vividly feel the pressure of someone's leg against mine. I get up. I run and turn the light all the way back on. She's full panic, eyes wide. "Did you feel that?" I said, "Yeah." "What the heck was that?" We are completely freaking out. Don't want to wake anybody up. The lights are on. She puts everything away. Went to sleep. Looking back, I realize now the biggest mistake that we could have ever made is not saying goodbye. We go to sleep. I honestly forget about it. We giggle about it in the morning over breakfast. She goes home. We're back at school Monday. Nothing really happens. Halfway into that week, I get a call from her around dinner time. She's at her mom's. She sounds freaked out on the phone. She's like, "Hey, have you been feeling anything since our last sleepover? When we used the Ouija board, ever since we used that thing the last couple nights, I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, there's somebody in my room. Fast forward to a few nights later. I go upstairs, I get ready for bed, shut all my lights off, get into my bed, pull the covers up, close my eyes, and I start to settle in. Within 5 minutes, there's this ringing in my ears. Wasn't super high-pitched, but enough to make me uncomfortable. I sit up, get a little nervous, and I'm like, okay, you're making it up. Just close your eyes and go back to sleep. I lay down, I get comfortable again. This time, the ringing is louder. Now I feel this pressure on my chest. I tell myself, don't open your eyes. I could feel someone staring at me almost nose to nose. If I open my eyes, it would be right there. The pressure in my chest is getting heavier. I get the courage to sit up and open my eyes. There's nothing there. I had to sleep with my light on that night. And of course, my dad gets up in the middle of the night. And he shuts it off for at least 6 months. Any time that I had to go to my dad's and stay there, that would happen every single night. Unless I kept my light on. I kept getting in trouble for falling asleep, with the light on as soon as the lights would go off. This thing would be right in my face. When I was trying to sleep, I couldn't even use the dimmer anymore. They would shut themselves off. This started happening a lot. I felt so crazy I knew that my dad would be upset if he found out that I brought a Ouija board into his house so I didn't say anything. My friend started experiencing the same thing. A few weeks goes by. I go to spend the night at her house. We are baking, watching movies, having a great time. Her mom goes upstairs to go to sleep. Her and I are alone. Her and I are starting to chat about the things that have been happening and the things we've been feeling. At the house, the only light that's on is the chandelier. She's like, let's grab our stuff. Let's go upstairs. We'll hang out in my room the rest of the night before we go to sleep. She goes up the stairs first, gets to the very top of the first set of stairs, and stops dead in her tracks, staring at the wall. I'm standing at the bottom of the stairs like, what are you doing? Why are you not going to your room? She doesn't turn around. She doesn't move. She doesn't look back at me. Nothing. She just says, don't move. I'm standing there terrified. What are we not moving for? What do you see that I'm not seeing? I slowly turn my head, just barely to the left. There is this little boy sitting on the chandelier, legs wrapped around the bottom, staring at her and I. Do we run? Do we walk? What do we do here? I said. Just ignore it if you give it attention. It's only gonna get worse. Walk upstairs, don't look over that way again. Her and I start with a walk, and of course, it turns into a run. We're terrified. We get to her room, sweating, freaking out. There's no way that really happened. It didn't. Go spend the night at her house for a few weeks after. That she told me. There was a few other times after that. Incidents that she saw him. I don't know if ignoring it is what helped it go away for her. But after a handful of times, it stopped happening. I had a few more experiences after that. I just thought, this was going to happen for the rest of my life. I'd be in the bathroom getting ready for school. Someone would shake the door violently. I'm alone. There's no one there. Things like that happened for several months afterwards. A few more weeks goes by. My little sister was a baby at the time. It was just me, her, and my stepmom home, alone. She's upstairs falling asleep in her bassinet. An hour goes by, and she starts crying. Something woke her up. I go to look at the monitor. I see a hand gently patting her back. She falls back asleep. I'm like, Oh, perfect. I don't need to go up there. My stepmom made it up there as she went back to sleep. She's fine. 2 minutes later, my stepmom walks in the front door from outside. I said, "Did you just come in from outside? Or were you upstairs with the baby?" And she's like, "No. I was cleaning out my car. I didn't say anything. I just sat there." I went back and looked at the video later. And of course, there's nothing on there. I have nothing to show for it or to prove it. After a couple days, I started really just trying to visualize what I had seen, to see if I could put together what the hand looked like, or whose hand it could have been. I remember there being this green emerald ring on the middle finger. That's the ring that my grandma wore pretty much every day after that experience. And seeing what I believe was her on the camera, soothing my sister, everything just stopped happening. I was able to sleep normally again. My friend wasn't seeing stuff anymore. I like to think that somehow she paid a visit, not just to see my sister, but to be like, "Hey, you guys don't belong here. Move on." I actually found out from my friend, a few years after all this had happened, that there had been a lot of crime in our neighborhood. Prior to us moving in, there was a park right across from our house, right across the street, that you could see from my bedroom window. I found out a few years later that a man that lived in the neighborhood for several years took his life at that park. I don't know if because our house was in such close proximity to the park, if maybe there was just this bad energy from stuff that had happened there, or from what happened with him lingering in the area. But I can definitely say, I'm still a firm believer that stuff is real. I have not used a Ouija board since 10, and I'll never use one again. I definitely still have experiences. I'm about to be 32 in November, and stuff still happens. It's not nearly as bad as it was. I make jokes about it now. I feel like keeping it lighthearted. It won. Doesn't scare me. But it also doesn't welcome in the darker, maybe more sinister spirits that could potentially make themselves known. The most recent experience I had was actually about a week ago. My grandfather unfortunately passed away early May. It was very unexpected. I took the loss really hard. I get married in a couple of weeks, and he was so unbelievably excited for the wedding. I was given some of his things. I just feel badly. Wanted something of his to keep around. I have a picture of him from barber school. He was a very proud barber for over 60 years. On the same shelf as his photo, I have a pair of beads of his that he wore all of the time. He loved to wear necklaces, and I have his hair cutting scissors. A week ago, I was getting ready for work, and out of nowhere, the light started making this weird buzzing noise and was dimming itself almost in frequency. There was no music on, no TV on. And I giggled and I was like, "Oh, Grandpa, you came to visit? I've been waiting for you." As soon as I said that, the lights shut themselves off and back on. They started making that sound again, and dimming in frequency. The more that I talked to him, the more the lights started doing that. They would get really bright and then really dim again. It was him paying a visit. I still talk to him every now and again, and the lights will do their thing. I'm sure a lot of that is just having his stuff in our apartment, but I definitely still have experiences to this day. I'm just grateful that they're a little bit nicer now than they used to be. If you have a true scary story that happened to you, and you want to share it with the rest of us, go to truescarystory.com and fill out the form. You can always reach out to me in case you have any questions. Anyway, if you like the show, drop some stars for us in the ratings and reviews. I'll be back next week with another story. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. See you soon. Please listen to the story We Opened a Door. We couldn't close. We're about to hear a series of experiences from two of our community members. From Scary FM, from objects moving on their own, to a ghostly child that roams around at night. My name is Edwin. And here are Gabby and Mike's true scary stories. I actually grew up in the south side of San Antonio. I want to say this happened around the 90s or the early 2000s. I remember specifically a night that my mom had passed away not that long ago. They were messing with the Ouija board, my relatives. One of my relatives asked my mom, "Hey, you want to play the Ouija board so you could talk to your mom?" My mom's like, "That's not my mom. That's not my mom." She knew very well what that game represents. She knew it was nothing good. It's like opening up a portal. We were renting this house from Maisha, which is my dad's oldest sister. Two of my uncles were drunk. Very drunk. They were sitting like towards the end of the yard. The dogs went barking like towards the driveway. And then like they came back with their tails, like in between their legs. And then like one of my deals was crashed out. And my other deal saw a lady coming through the driveway. The lady just kept walking. We had a large pecan tree for our house. And we had like a little cement sidewalk. And it was like a piece of slab of concrete, like behind our house, and she like disappeared there. And like he was asking her questions like, "Senora Al, you know, nothing, nada." My sister, she saw a white lady with a white dress. In the hallway of our house, they saw like a lady in the porch sweeping. My grandma, my mom's mom, she was a white lady with white hair, and she was wearing like a specific nightgown that she would wear. I remember they literally saw her on the porch, back porch sweeping. My grandma had passed away. In 2005, we moved out of there, the house that my parents are living at currently. One of my cousins had a Bobo home. She lit this mobile home on fire. I don't know why she did so. We got the house, we purchased it. And mind you, it was burnt. Like it was halfway burnt. My dad was working on this house while we were living there like halfway. I remember we would take the pictures. You can see faces on these pictures. I remember one time I was laying down in the living room of that house. I literally felt somebody ran their fingers through my hair. We would hear our names being called, because I call my mom Ma. She would hear my voice, and I would be at school when this happened. They still experience stuff till this day. A few years ago, my little brother, I don't know what got him into, getting into the Tatic stuff, but he started doing upside down crosses, pentagrams, and they're like, I remember he had a devil head like a ball. I remember. My baby brother and my dad were cleaning up the bedroom where my brother we used to sleep in. They specifically threw that ball in the trash, in the fire. For some reason, when they went back inside, that little devil ball was inside, the same spot where my brother had left it. One time, my mom was washing clothes. I want to say about like 11. My sister, my brother-in-law, and my niece were asleep. My dad was asleep. So my mom was the only one that was awake. She literally saw a shadow, like pass by. And everybody was asleep. I remember my baby brother recorded some orbs floating in that house. It was a few years ago when he did that. It was very strange. My mom, she said that she would make dinner quickly for my dad, because my dad used to get out, like at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. 'cause he used to work late. She would literally make the dinner at 4. As soon as it hits 5, she goes into her bedroom and she locks herself in, 'cause she did not want to be in the kitchen by herself. One time, my dad and my brother-in-law were coming home from work. My sister, my mom, and my niece were in the kitchen. My dad was coming inside, and he said that he heard like an evil laughter, like very ugly. My dad goes, "It can consider your tan feel. What's he can? Who laughs so ugly like that? Who laughed?" My dad's like, you could hear like an ugly laughter. Mind you, my dad's a skeptic. He does not believe in stuff like that. My tia and my tio live in a mobile home. Apparently, it used to be like an Indian burial ground there. This was like a bad situation that happened in my dad's side of the family. The kids were taken away, so it was my mom, my dad, my tia, my tio, my cousin. My dad literally heard a baby crying. But it wasn't like a crying, like sad, no. It was like a crying what? They take something away from them. Like you literally heard that coming from a bedroom. My baby brother, he said that. He had spent the night there with my cousin, 'cause they used to hang out all the time. And my baby brother said that everybody went to sleep, and he was the only one that was awake. I think they were playing a video game. I don't remember, but he literally heard somebody say. The one that has scared me the most is the one. I'm living here because I live with my in-laws. I was a part of, I want to say 7. 8 in the morning, my kids were asleep. My husband was asleep, everybody was asleep. I was the only one that was awake. So I make myself my morning coffee watching TV. I specifically heard footsteps, coming from the hallway. I was waiting for one of my kids to come out of the bedroom. Nothing. Nobody. What my husband said that the nephew of his had saw, like a shadow. 'Cause my mother-in-law, she has pictures of my nieces on the wall, up from their quinceañera. He saw like a shadow go by those pictures, from one end to the other end of the pictures, which very, very weird. I also saw a shadow person here. I was washing the dishes from the corner of my eye. I literally saw a shadow go to the hallway. I went to go peek, nothing. I asked my husband, I'm like, have y'all done the research of this house? I'm gonna try to get my husband just to tell his stories. Mike and Gabby were both present during the recording for this story. And up next, Mike is going to share some of his own experiences. We've been here for since early 90s. And I think this house was built sometime in the mid to late 80s. And we moved here in the early 1990s. I'll say 91 in the previous. Owner here was just some guy who owned a motorcycle, but he was here for such a short time. I don't even know when it even started. To tell the truth, maybe in the mid to late 90s. A friend of mine and he would stay the night every now and then. We were playing a PlayStation 1, just being goofy or whatever. So I hopped over the couch and I went to the kitchen. Got some Kool-Aid. It was a glass cup too. So I placed it on top of the table. There was a phone book there. So I don't remember if I was on top of the phone book or if it was right next to it. I just put my glass there, hopped back over the couch. Out of nowhere, boom. We both turned around. I thought you heard that. Oh yeah, it's obvious. So I got up and I turned on the light. 'Cause we had the lights off. I looked around. I think I put my glass on top of this book. And the book was on the floor, like the big old phone book. I was like, oh, I guess it's time to go to sleep. Let's turn off the game and go. I was in my old room and, use the restroom. And the restroom is like right next to my old room. And I don't know what time. It was super early, maybe 3, 4, maybe 5. I don't know, still dark outside. So I'm still kind of groggy, so I'm going to the restroom. And this is when you had those like lights that, you plug into the on the wall candlelight kind of effect. I reached for the door, and the door was creaked open already. So it opened up just a little bit more, and I was like, nope. I just turned around, went back to sleep, held it till like sunlight showed up. I would say this was probably around high school times, and my brother was sleeping in the living room. I went to go restroom or whatever. My brother was hiding in the kitchen, like crouched down. Goes, hey, Mike. I was like, oh, what are you doing there, man? He's like, something is hitting the glass on the window. At that time, we had like a past the backyard. There was like a small, dense foresty, like section of the field. I guess because there was like the main road behind or in front of that. Now, they've built like an Arby's or something right there. But a long time ago, there was like this creepy forest-like area. It's so small, but like when you go in there, it's so dense that it gets dark in there. It's like so weird. So anyways, talking about like somebody throwing rocks or something, tapping his glass, I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I heard it, and then now I squatted down. We're both squatting down, like looking at this window like, and I had a dog in the backyard and he's like, not even barking or nothing. I was like, I don't know what that was. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go lay back down. You're on your own. So he's like, man, that's messed up. When our kids were real small, we would always get balloons, and I've always hated balloons. So we always had ceiling fans on all the time, and these balloons would always get tangled up. So another reason why I hated them, because I had to untangle the balloons from the ceiling fans. So one morning, my son, he wanted to have the balloons in the room. We're like, no, because we have a ceiling fan in there, but I kept them in the hallway. So the next morning, I was in the kitchen. How it looked out, the layout would be like our room is at the very end. Then, like the hallway, so we have to go to that hallway. And then it attaches to the living room, and then the living room attached to the kitchen. When you're sitting against the wall where I was at, I could see the hallway a little bit to my left, and the kitchen would be just straight ahead. And then, further down, would be another room, which we called the cuckoo room growing up, because it was always the dark room that now we converted it to like a music room, computer room, which one I'm sitting in right now. But this used to be the cuckoo room. So these balloons, we had them in the hallway, and I'm sitting in the kitchen. And one balloon was just kind of like coasting. And I see it, I was like, what? I could see it like, moving just one balloon. Hey, it's coming out here. The AC is not even on at the time that the ceiling fans are off, because I know they'll get tangled up in there. And this is when the balloons were like, kind of like not full, so they're not to the ceiling, and it wasn't depleted too much, but it was like at about half your height. And I'm just looking at it, I'm like, if it's gonna come to me, that's really weird. It was like just coasting. Coasting comes out of the hallway. There's like a slow turn coming kind of towards me, and I'm just like spooning my cereal in my hand or something. I'm like looking at it. It just kind of coasted to the Kokuryu room door. and just stopped there. Gabby was talking to me and I was looking at her. It was also in the kitchen. And I saw somebody walking in the backyard. And I was like, what was that? And she was like, what? Screaming at me. I just bolted past by her, opened the backsliding door, and I ran outside. There was somebody just walking here. And like the description was, it looked like a female, because this figure has short shorts and like I would say a gray sweater, and looked like they had their hands in her pocket. They had like the hoodie on, but I couldn't see the face. And this was kind of like nighttime too. So it was dark in the backyards. We have a bunch of stuff that my dad has and my brother has over the years. Just sitting in the back, so in the darkness, if you were to just go in there unknowingly, you're gonna trip and fall on something. So I ran out there like so fast, and I didn't see anything. And I was like, what was that? I saw somebody, and also when I went out there, I heard the neighbor's dog just started barking. When I was outside, I was like, okay, if somebody was out here, that dog would have barked. Why did it bark at me? There was these people across the street. They took a picture of their daughters. They were like, oh my gosh. They took a picture of a ghost. And I was like, what are you talking about? Let me see. They had a couple of pictures of our neighbor across the street's daughters. And one of the pictures had like this guy. He'd had like thick rim glasses, the white long sleeve shirt, and you could see it so clear, but he was transparent at the same time. And he was like walking up the street, looking towards not the girls, but like at the camera. It's so clear, but nobody knows who this guy was. Early too, when my space was kind of big, my sister would always add pictures to. And some of those pictures would be like viruses, so I had to do virus checks and stuff like that. So one night I was just sitting there for hours, and my sister and her kids were staying here at that time, so they're like sleeping in the futon. I'm just sitting there, you know, on this laptop and in the corner of my eye. I saw something move, so when I took another look, I saw a shadow. I swear it looked like a little child. Like child's height, like my nephew's height at the time. Short like a small child. It moved and then it ran into like a parent's room, or like that hallway where the washroom was at. Because during that time it was kind of a garage. But it was being built into those rooms. I got up and I was like, was that my nephew? I know he's asleep, and I was like, that's kind of weird. My boys were pretty small. Gabby and the boys were asleep. I, go to the hallway, go to the living room, go to the restroom, and I hear footsteps. It sounded like it came from maybe the hallway. Came to the door, and I'm like, oh, it's probably the boys. They probably have to use the restroom or something. So I have to quickly finish my thing. And I hear run stop and then run back. Like maybe they got scared and ran back into the room. I come out, open the door. You know nobody's out there. I'm looking okay. That's weird. Go back into the room. And I go to my boys and see Gabby. And they're all asleep. I was like, what was that? That was so clear. Like somebody barefooted ran. Feet running from far away to close and then back. Told Gabby about that. She heard something similar too. And when our firstborn was small, right? I think we had the baby monitor, and it was kind of, those things kind of sometimes work. Sometimes they don't, and I think we had it on. And we heard a baby cry from the hallway. And I was like, I think I heard him cry. So we ran over there to go check. And he was sound asleep. If he cried, he would have been awake. I don't think it came from the monitor at all. It's so strange. everything that's happened with me. It's like I never really got scared. I guess I did. At first it was like kind of creepy, but now I'm like, I don't really care. But I always get real interested, like hyped up when something I see or hear. If there's something here, it's not harmful for sure. If you want to share your own true story, visit me over on True Scary Story, links to. Everything will be in the description of this episode to get next week's story early and all of our catalog without ads. Try out Scary Plus over on Scary Plus. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. Please listen to the story, The Man in the Green Hat, A Lifetime of Haunting. Some people live in haunted houses. But what if the hauntings follow you everywhere? From sleep paralysis to ghostly whispers. Something has always been watching him. My name is Edwin, and here is Ted's true scary story. My name is Ted. I'm from Vietnam, and I came here when I was a teenager. I was 13. I'm from Orange County, California. It already started when I was in high school, in the early to mid-2000s. We lived in an apartment for low-income folks. And really the first time editing the I've experienced was one afternoon when, after I got home from school, usually my parents will be at work. My siblings, they will be at school. So I will be home by myself for a couple of hours. In this apartment, once you walk in, you hit the living room first. And then on your left side, you see the kitchen window. And on the right side is a hallway to the bedroom. I came home and I heard water running in the kitchen. And I heard the opening and closing of the kitchen cupboard. Thinking, maybe it's my mom. Sometimes she would come home early. I turned right into the hallway to go to the bedroom, just to take a nap after school. And I yelled out to my mom, who say, "Hey, can you wake me up in a couple hours?" And I heard her reply. It was a raspy female voice. "Okay, Con. Okay, my son in Vietnamese." Voice was raspy, so I thought, maybe she's sick and she must have a cough. And that's why she was raspy. And that's why she don't come home early from work. So I went and took a nap, and then about an hour later, I got a phone call, and it was my mom. So I answered it, and she said, "Hey, what did you want to eat?" Because she had to stay late at work, and she was not going to go to cook dinner. And I realized that whoever it was in the kitchen early was not my mom. That time right before sunset, when it's still light outside, but then inside your house is still dark. It was pitch black, and inside was an eerie silence. And I told my mom, "Please come home early," and I was like a teenager. But I was still a kid. I sat up in bed, and I was so afraid. I didn't want to move, because I didn't close the bedroom door. And now, I'm staring into the dark hallway, and the whole time thinking, who was that? Thankfully, my dad came home only 20 minutes later, and I asked everyone in the house, did anyone come home earlier? And no one said that they did, just chalked it up to my imagination. But it left a nagging feeling that it was something more than that. About 6 months later, I just gotten back from a wrestling practice, and I was exhausted, so I dozed off to sleep, and usually I had a radio alarm clock next to me, and I was fall asleep listening to the radio. This time, I woke up suddenly and not knowing where I was. I woke up, but my eyes were still closed. I heard there's music playing from the radio, and I remember I left the radio on when I went to sleep. I realized I must be in bed, so I opened my eyes, and I could no longer hear the song, and I was staring at the ceiling, unable to move. So I yelled out, "Mama," I could only hear the sound in my head because my mouth wouldn't open. So I closed my eyes for a moment and I heard the song. The song was on radio, so I knew that I was in bed. And also I know I was awake, but I could not move, so I opened my eyes, looked at the ceiling, and I could not move, and I couldn't hear the song anymore. So I kept doing that. I don't know how long it felt very long. I felt my arms and my legs moving finally. So I was like, yes, I'm finally awake, and I was sleeping on the edge of the bed. So I thought, if I turn over and I fell down, it hurts, but then I would wake up. So I try moving my arms and my legs over, and I turn over, and I felt my body falling, and I felt the thud as it hit the floor, and I felt the shock and the pain of it. I must be awake by now, so I opened my eyes, and I'm still back in bed looking at the ceiling. I tried again. I tried falling off the bed again, and it kept doing it, and I was stuck in a nightmare. But a few times, I finally woke up. When I woke up, I couldn't trust that I was really awake. I was sweating so much, and it was that cold sweat, and my shirt was damp with sweat, and my heart was racing. That was the first time that I truly felt afraid. Is fear being locked inside your own body? Shortly after that, I had my first vivid or lucid dream. In my dream, I was at home, but nobody else was there, and the layout of the apartment I was in the dream, it was the same layout, but the furniture was different. It was older, it was dustier. I walked out from my bedroom to the hallway, and there was a fallen mirror there, with a diagonal crack on it. I walked in front of it, and I saw the reflection of a little Caucasian boy with a bowl-cut blonde hair and blue eyes. I said to myself, this isn't real. I must be dreaming. I woke up, and it was the first time that I realized. I could tell that when I'm in a dream or not. And it was one of those weird dreams. The next time I had another weird dream. I was floating around the apartment. This time the furniture in the room was in it. The house was also different than the previous dream. I was floating around. I wasn't walking. I went through the kitchen. I went through the sliding door in the kitchen to the backyard, and immediately I came face to face with a darker-skinned Hispanic and Native American man. No, he didn't look scary or anything, but he said, "What are you doing in my house?" And they're very confused with a very loud voice, like I could hear in my head. I was shocked, I could hear him, and I could see his face. And I woke up sweating again, and I was like, okay, maybe I was a spirit back in the day or something. It felt like that. Everything that has happened so far. It was all in my dreams. So I just thought again, and I wanted to have a very active imagination. It's just, silly dreams. And then a few months later, one night I was taking a shower, and then I felt someone watching me. So I cleaned the shambles from a face, and I looked out through the frosted bathroom. Sliding door. It was a male figure. He was in a light blue buttoned shirt and tan slacks, pulled up way past his belly, and a green hard hat. Very official looking. So I was like, oh, my God, someone is in the bathroom with me. So I slid open the frosted door. No one was there. I stood there for a moment. I'm saying I must have imagined the whole thing. I was so scared, I didn't even finish showering. I just rinsed off and dried up. And I ran out into my room that night. My dad told me that my paternal grandfather is dead. He passed away in Vietnam. At that time, I turned on Yahoo Messenger to communicate with the family in Vietnam, find out what happened, and then, a few days later, we watched the funeral procession on the internet. A few weeks later, we got a DVD from Vietnam, from the funeral, and we all watched it. And at the end of the video, there was a slideshow showing all the photos of my grandfather. During the slideshow, a picture popped up, and I had to pause the DVD because it was a picture of him in his youth. Volunteer uniform, light blue button shirt, tan slacks, and a green wide jungle hat. I couldn't believe it. My whole family is Catholic, but they do not believe in ghosts or demons or anything, because it's the house of God, and God wouldn't let any supernatural things happening. Just talking about it was not looked favorably upon. So I calculated what time that I saw that figure, and it was a few minutes after he passed in Vietnam. The following year, we moved to a different apartment. And the thing about Orange County, California is, it's home to the largest concentration of Vietnamese immigrants, and there have been a few generations that have been here before the 70s, before the end of the war. So we were excited to move to a new, more spacious 2-story apartment. At that time, I was going off to college, but I stayed home to save money. That's when the sleep paralysis escalated. I started seeing figures. I felt the bed move during the sleep paralysis episode. The stereotypical packmen staring at me. They had women straddling me while I'm in the sleep paralysis and looking at me. One time, I was sleeping in the living room on the couch, and I had sleep paralysis, and I heard someone walking up the stairs. So it was a 2-story apartment. So it's a second story who had stairs going up. So I was, in the living room. I had sleep paralysis, and I heard someone moving up the stairs, slowly but intentionally walking, so you can hear them. The first step, dude, dude, dude. And a deep voicemail said, I'm coming to get you. And by this time, I'm used to it. So I knew how to wake myself out of sleep paralysis. I just used to shake my head really hard. And if I shake it really hard, I would wake up. I'm a very skeptical person. I like to think I'm rational. So I looked into it, and there was proposed theories on how or why sleep paralysis happens. It's the theta brainwaves, invading other type of brainwaves during sleep. And normally your body is paralyzed, so you don't act out your dreams. So sometimes you wake up and your mind is woken up, but your body hasn't woken up with it. So you're still paralyzed. And I rationalized it as it's just something that happened. It's a physiological phenomenon. It's not real. So I just kept on living my life. And with sleep paralysis, as you know, that is something common. And then one night, I was studying in the living room again. Well, early into the morning, around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps coming from the bedroom upstairs. Let's not tune abnormal. People in my family, they would come down for a glass of water. But this time, it was my teenage sister. She had a dazed look on her face. She was staring in a distance as she was walking through the living room, as she walked into the kitchen. So I thought maybe she's sleepwalking. And it's the first time I've seen someone sleepwalking. So I pay attention. I didn't want to wake her, because I read all the lore that you're not supposed to wake a person that's sleepwalking. You just guide them back to bed. So she walked to the kitchen, and she walked to the kitchen window, She opened imaginary door. She looked up and down, and then she closed the door. And she turned around and went back to bed. So a few weeks later, I found out, incidentally, from the landlord that the tenant before last, they had a brown fridge next to the kitchen window. The pictures he took before they moved out. Because before people move out back then, they just came in and took pictures to see if there's any damage. He dug it up, he showed me. And there was a fridge, exactly where my sister was, pretending to open the door. And I couldn't believe it, because it was exactly where she was at, in front of the kitchen window. But again, I wasn't allowed to talk about any of this in my house. So I explained it away as a coincidence. I just brushed it off. It's early morning. I went down to the kitchen again to get water. As I turned a corner into the kitchen, I saw someone sitting there in the dark, at the kitchen table, and the figure looked like my dad. I was like, "Hey, Dad, what are you doing awake?" He didn't answer me. "Oh yeah, I got some water," went back up, and the door to my parents' bedroom was open. I was drinking water, and I looked in, and I saw my parents sleeping in there, so I stopped. I turned on the light, and I ran downstairs. Of course, there was nobody there. Another late-night study, and I was laying on the sofa with a laptop on my chest, after an hour in that position. And my back was hurting a little bit, so I set up to put my laptop on the coffee table, and just before I put it down, the table slipped like a good foot away from me. And the coffee table it was not too heavy, but it was heavy. I just held a laptop in my hands, and I was like, I froze. I'm trying to process what happened. In California, earthquakes aren't that uncommon. So I explained it away as an earthquake, But I knew that it was an earthquake. The whole apartment, everything would be shaken and moved. And not just one coffee table. So now I'm 2 years into college. We welcome into addition to our house. My baby sister was born. She was the joy of our lives. And I love taking care of her and spending time with her. When she was 2, I was taking care of her one morning. And we were alone in the 2-story apartment. And after giving her a bath and I put clothes on her, I was going to take her downstairs to get something to eat. And I had turned a corner. And I was a couple of steps down the stairs, and she was about to go with me. When she's turned back to look at the bedroom hallway, and she said, "Hey, look, there's a lady there." So I just grabbed her and I just booked it downstairs. Again, I played it out as her imagination. And I didn't want to acknowledge it. Shortly thereafter, we had a roommate. He was a son of a family friend. So he came in to study, so we gave him a place to stay. He shared a bedroom with me. Now, the whole time, there was always something going on in the room that I slept in. Things like feeling being watched, waking up feeling someone sitting in the bed, with a depression in the mattress, and especially the door opening on its own. So outside of this bedroom is a bedroom hallway, and there was a loose piece of floorboard right outside of it. So if you walk slowly, you would hear the creak of the floorboard at around 3 or 4 a.m. almost every single night. I would hear the floorboard creaking. And again, I just explained this as someone in my family, just probably waking up to get some water. But the door kept opening by itself around 3 or 4 a.m. every night. Because I would just wake up with the door open, even though I remember closing the door before I go to sleep. I asked everyone if they opened the door to check on us during the night, and nobody said they did. I tried to rule out any physical explanation. We closed the window, so there's no draft that was pulling the door open from outside. We changed the locks, we changed the door. Then we changed the hole in the door frame, where the locking mechanism goes in. So basically, we changed the whole thing. Sort of changing the frame cause. It was a rented apartment, but the door kept opening. And so one night, we were up in bed. He was in his bed, I was in my bed. We were each on our laptop. And then we heard the door handle turning. We looked to see who's checking on us, but the door creaked open, and the door had no turn back. There was nobody there. The door was in this place, and you had to turn the handle and push to open it. Finally, I got up and I closed the door and I locked it. Then I was convinced that there was no explanation for a lot of stuff. That was happening. The first EVP that we captured, my roommate was an amateur rapper. He would write and record a song. It was like a whole thing in the late 2000s. One afternoon I came back from class, and I saw him laying in his bed with his headphones on, editing his songs. This time he was staring at his laptop, and his face was like flushed, like he was like red, and he looked shocked. So he told me to come here. Put your headphone on and listen to this. So he had his audio playback open, and I saw the different spikes of his voice. On the audiogram, before those specks of his voice, there was one single spike. So he played it. The voice of an older man in Vietnamese rang land, which is keep going. And he was visibly scared. And I didn't know what EVP was so surreal at that time. So I put a recorder in my room later and went to school. I made sure that all the doors were closed. All the window was closed. There was no one at home during the day. That people either went to work, or went to school. So I got home that day and I listened to the playback. 4 hours of static nothing. I'm in the middle of doing math. I heard an older lady laughing. I guess from her age, she was a middle-aged lady. Again, I tried to rationalize it right. Maybe it was the sound from outside. But I checked with the neighbors. At that time, there was nobody around anyway. Went to school and went to work. It was weird, so I didn't try to record anything else. One night, I woke up in the middle of sleep, and I knew I was having sleep paralysis. I was laying on my side and was looking at my roommate. I said I couldn't see his face, because there was a pale white legs in front of it, belonging to a girl, and she wasn't my sister, because her legs and thighs were not as thin as my sister's. I put white legs and it turned around. It started to bend down. I closed my eyes, because I knew whoever it was bent down to look at me. I pretended to be asleep, but I could feel the eyes looking at me. And I woke up, and I saw my roommate laying on his side, looking at me, and I could tell that he saw her too, because he was scared. But he just turned away towards his wall and went back to sleep. Eventually, he found a place on his own and he moved out. I moved to the other bedroom with my little brother. On the wall, there was a heavy wooden cross, a good 10 pounds, and it was right where I slept. So it was right on top of my head. One night I was sleeping, and suddenly I heard someone yell in my left ear, "Tan." That's my Vietnamese name. I just jolted awake just as a reaction. I put my hands up. As I put my hands up, the cross fell into my hand. They pushed into my head. It hurt. I looked at my little brother, and he was sleeping. So if someone was really there, it would have hurt him. It was really loud, either in my ears or in my head. I was confused. There was a little bit of adrenaline too, because I woke up and something fell in my head. I put a cross on the table and put a pillow over my head and went back to sleep and try not to think about what happened. In Ikibindoku's, we, the whole family, went back to Vietnam to visit our relatives for the first time. It's been like almost 10 years now. They always had a little vacation. I went to the Buddhist temple, where my grandfather's ashes were kept. It was in this little room, where all the other ashes were stored, with a picture of decased in front of it. There was a little ceremony, and it was very solemn atmosphere. And even though I was not a Buddhist, I put my hand together, and I listened as everyone else prayed. I was in the first row, and then suddenly I felt numb, like I was in sleep paralysis. But then while I was awake, I was unable to move, and I felt I was trapped in my own mind and in my own body. My eyes became blurry, and I saw a figure in the tan slacks and the blue shirt and the green hat again. He was standing where my grandfather was standing, and I couldn't see his face, but I saw his outline. I was shocked and emotional. I snapped out of it. I couldn't see him anymore. I turned over to my uncle that was standing next to me, and I said, "Hey, I see Grandpa." And he just nodded. It was more natural to accept the paranormal in Buddhism. At that time, I felt relieved, glad that I saw my grandfather one last time. So I thought at the time. We stayed in Vietnam for a few more days. It's customary to have a shrine in the house, honoring the ancestors. So basically, you have a place where, with all the pictures of your ancestors, and people would come visit and reminisce about the family members. The shrine was on the 4th floor. It was a party. I was eating and drinking. I was drunk. I went upstairs to go lay down. I fell asleep with one of my uncle and aunt next to me. In 30 minutes or so after I went to sleep, I sat up. I looked at my uncle and my aunt with distant eyes. I stroked my imaginary beard, and I said, "Is Tam's family visiting?" Time is my dad's name, and I continue to say things that I couldn't have known about. Other family members. They called my dad up. I was talking to him as if I'm his grandfather. My dad is forever Catholic. But he went upstairs to the altar, and he lit an incense offering for the ancestors. Shortly after that, I fell back to sleep. My great-grandfather had a long beard, and I bear a resemblance to him. Even the mole on my face is the same mole that he had. That trip I had to go back to the US earlier. Classes was going to start. I got back by myself. I was tired, and it was a different time zone, and I couldn't sleep. So I put on an exercise activity in the living room. I did an hour of cardio, and then I caught up with an hour of yoga. And at the end of the yoga session, there was a little meditation. So I closed my eyes, and the voice from the deity chanted in the And I didn't hide the volume up because, early in the morning, I didn't want to, disturb the neighbors. After a second on, I started to feel weightless and peaceful. And in the middle of the third, I felt a hot breath on my right ear, and I heard loud whispers of multiple voices. It lasted for maybe half a second, and when I opened my eyes and I saw no one around me, I was still like, a little disoriented from the meditation. I tried to recollect what just happened. Did I really hear whispers? So I called my friend. I told him I'm going to sleep over at his house. You know I've seen enough scary movies. It's a bad idea. The other person that believed was my little sister. The one that was sleepwalking. She came home one night. Besides, she's the one in college now. She was parked in the car and she was outside. And she saw my dad washing dishes through the window on the second floor. And she came up and she asked him, "Hey, was your sister here?" My aunt. And he said, "No, it's late and she's probably at home." You know, why would she be here? And she told him that. "I saw you washing dishes by the window." And there was an older woman with white hair and a bun. Standing behind you, he became defensive. And I told her to stop watching scary movies and imagining things. Eventually, I moved out of the apartment, so I would come back sometimes to have a sleepover. One night, I went to sleep in the room where the crash fell. This room belongs to my little sister now. My sister's closed laptop was in the room. She was away on a school trip. I closed the door. I locked it. I didn't want anything funny to happen. I went to sleep. Suddenly, I was jolted awake. Loud music was playing. I turned on the light and the laptop was open. YouTube was on, and I told myself it was impossible. First of all, the laptop was closed, even if I was sleepwalking. I didn't know her password to log in. Whoever it was, want to play a prank with me? Or wants to know that, hey, welcome back. Eventually we moved out. I found out that it was not the apartment. It was me. So I moved on to professional school in another country. But my first day there, I was so tired. I just crashed on the bed. I didn't care if the bed was dirty or not. I just crashed. I was so exhausted. I opened my eyes to another sleep paralysis episode. I couldn't move. And I heard the door creaking open. It was an Asian woman. She was wearing those Chinese flowery pajamas, and she was young with a bowl-cut hair. She floated around my luggage. She went around it. Then she straddled me to put her legs on top of me. And she looked at me. We were having a staring contest. Her face was pale white. She didn't look evil. She was more like mischievous. She smiled at me. I smiled at her. I blinked twice. She blinked twice. Then she just cocked her head back and I could hear her laugh in my head. Then she got off me, and then I closed my eyes. The next morning, I told my flatmates what happened, and surprisingly, they were supportive. And they offered to switch rooms with me. And then I dug up the history of the town we lived in. And sure enough, there was a sizable Chinese immigrant population there. So, a year went on, I was in graduate school. One night I dozed off after studying for 14 hours. And you know, if you're in graduate school, you're studying full-time for 16 hours a day. I remember it was a Thursday night when I went to sleep. And on Friday at around 2 a.m., I woke up with an uneasy feeling. And I opened my eyes, and I saw a pair of skinny girl legs, and asked myself, oh my God, it's the same strip reality episode. And I looked up to see who it was. I realized if I could look up, I'm not having sleep paralysis, I'm awake. And I looked up, and it was my classmate Macy, and she whispered Ted. And like a pillar of smoke, she just withered away. I sat right up because I could not believe. I just hallucinated someone in my class. So I went out for a drink of water to calm my nerves. I came back in to go to sleep, and there was a heaviness in the room, like the room was under high pressure. It was suffocating. So I turned on the fan and I opened the balcony door. I felt the same heaviness in the room. I just got up to the living room to study, and by 9, I was exhausted because I would have been up 28 hours already. My cell phone rang and it was my other friend. Jenny told me that her roommate, Macy, passed away in her sleep. Macy passed at around 1 a.m., and I saw her at 2. I can still see her in my head. A couple weeks later, I had another lucid dream. I was driving a bus with all of my extended family in the back. So I parked the bus at a roadside shack, and I told everyone, hey, wait here. I went to check out the location of this shack right. I stepped off the bus into the muddy ground. I felt the cold, dirty mud splash above my legs. I was wearing shorts for some reason, so I walked into the building. Behind the shack, there was a courtyard, and there was a couple rows of benches, and a few old Asian men were sitting there. I recognized the old man in the tan slacks and the green hat. It was my grandfather. I also recognized my great-grandfather, the old man with the long beard, and in front of them there was like a shimmering, clear, invisible wall of force fields, like it was shimmering. So I walked close to this barrier, and I pushed on it, and I felt the sting in my hand like a needle jab. But at the same time as I pushed on it, I felt it pulling me in, and I asked my grandfather that, hey, what are you doing here? You're dead. Hatches laughed, and the rest of them laughed too. Slowly, the benches with them started retreating back into the distance. I woke up from this dream, and I was crying, and I realized that was my grandfather saying goodbye, and I haven't seen my grandfather since. After that, I got married. We moved into a house, and we had a son. My 2-year-old toddler slept over at my mom's place, and he said he wouldn't go downstairs because great-grandfather was there. As for sure, I haven't told him about anything like that. I haven't told him about his grandfather or great-grandfather. Around this time, he started having an imaginary friend, like all toddlers do, but they would only play at 3 or 4 in the morning. That worried my wife a little bit because, he need to go to sleep. So one time at 6-7 p.m., and I was washing dishes in the kitchen. I heard feet running, and it was okay. My little partner. Why is he awake? Out of the hallway into the kitchen, a Caucasian white boy with bowl-cut hair and blue eyes. You remember this boy from the mirror. He ran out of the bedroom into the wall, and then my little toddler came out after him. I took a moment to collect myself and wanted to see what happened. The activities continued. At this time, we had another baby, 2 boys. I was holding a baby in the living room, and putting him to sleep, I was holding him. I was sitting in my chair in the living room, and the house was dark. There was a light that came through the window, probably from a passing car or so. In the living room, there's this liquor cabinet. The light shone into the liquor cabinet. I saw a phantom little dress that belonged to me, like a little girl or something. It was flowing in front of the cabinet. Because it was a glass liquor cabinet, not only did I see the dress in front of the cabinet, I saw the reflection of it in the cabinet too. I didn't do anything, because I didn't want to wake the baby. That's the time that I thought to myself, is this another haunted house? Because I grew up in 2 haunted apartments, and it was the first time I started to think, maybe it's not the apartment, maybe it's me. One time, I fell asleep and someone yelled out my name again. It was a younger female voice, It scared me out of my mind because it was loud. It was the loudest voice in my head I've ever heard. I asked my wife, did she call my name? She said no and just went back to sleep. I didn't know what any of this meant. I am a laboratory scientist. I work in a hospital. One night I was at work and I was in the pathology room. The hospital morgue is also in this room. I was cutting a piece of tissue for testing. I was concentrating on my work. Behind me was a cupboard. Suddenly, a few plastic fly holders and clamps came flying out of the cabinet, across the room and hit the other side. It hit the wall. It didn't fall, it flew out of there. Violently flew out of there. But no, I was in the middle of cutting. I was in the sterile field. So I couldn't leave, so I just said out loud, "You know I'm working here. Leave me alone." I finished up as quickly as I could, and I ran out of there. One night I have a checklist in my head of what I needed to do. So I'm totally in the zone going on to the next task. I opened the refrigerator with the glass door to retrieve a unit of blood. I got it, and I swung the door closed. In the reflection in the corner of the room, there was a shadow figure. It is solid black, wearing black scrubs, sitting on the counter in the corner behind me, crossing his arms and looking down. His whole body was black. I didn't process what I saw until a couple seconds later. I turned around, and there was no one in there. I was the only person there. I just dropped everything. I just ran outside. I tell my coworker what just happened. Before this, I would just see the phantom lab coat swinging in my career for vision, or occasionally I heard the disembodied voices or someone calling my name. But this is the first time that I saw the shadow figure. Usually when I do something tedious, I would have my headphones on. I would listen to music or podcast. I took my headphone out, went to the bathroom. I put it on the keyboard. I came back to the bathroom and I looked for my headphones. It wasn't there, and I looked all over. I turned the keyboard upside down. I looked in the drawer. I looked on the floor. Did I drop it? I asked my other coworker in the room if she was playing with me, and she hid my headphone. She said no, she was in her corner, so she went out, and I just spoke out loud. I said, "Hey, can you not mess with me? I'm at work," and returned my headphone. I got out of the room, so both of us went out. I went to get some water too. 3 minutes later, I came back and the headphones was on the keyboard, exactly where I left it. And remember, I turned the keyboard upside down to look for it. I've had this recurring dream where I was in the Vietnamese countryside. I was in one of the villages. In the kitchen. It was not a modern kitchen that we used to. It was a shack kitchen. There's a kitchen in the shack, basically. And it was a wood fire in the kitchen. I would dream I would help out with the cooking, stoking the fire, butchering the meat. And I remember reaching into the crevice. On the side of the stove, I can still see it. It was a darkened, half-burnt piece of wood with a fault crack at a handle. So at the handle, there's a crack, just to move the firewood around. And we wake up and not think too much about it. It's just another recurring dream. So it went to one of my trips back to Vietnam. That's one time we went to an ancestral home of a distant branch of my family. It was in the countryside, and it was a bit of a drive outside the city. It's a big property. I got to the kitchen, and it was the same shack kitchen. I had a surreal moment. I just stopped there, and I looked around. It was the exact same layout. The shelf was exactly the same. I felt a little lightheaded. and my arms and legs were weak, 'cause could not believe that I saw this in my dream. Dejero is when you had a feeling that you've done this before, but I knew exactly what this was. I know the kitchen. I went to the stove. I bent down, I stuck my hand in the crevice. I pulled out the same half-burnt stick with a fork, crack at the handle. This was not a coincidence. I didn't share this with the rest of the family for nobody believed. Another dream I had. My routine was, I would jog in the morning. One time, I woke up to find one of my uncles standing next to me and put his hand on my chest and tell me to stay home. No, I don't need to run today. He looked just like my uncle, but the only difference, he had a thick mustache. It didn't make sense if he was living in Vietnam. Why would he be here in the US with me? I called and I talked to my aunt's uncle in Vietnam. I found out that my uncle was the youngest in the family. My grandma had a miscarriage after having him, and it was a boy. My aunt told me that it could have been him. The uncle that my grandma had had a miscarriage, and then a few months later, someone in my neighborhood was taking her dogs out for a jog. She was run over by a car whose driver ran a stop sign. I wanted to make the connection, but the timing of the day was off. I drop in the morning. This accident happened in the afternoon. Later, I realized that if I was destined to get run over that morning, but stay in bed instead, then maybe no one else had to take my place, and there would be no accident at all. But yeah, that's conjecture. I dreamed about a family of 4, playing on the side of a house. It was a Caucasian family. There was a green convertible. Personal driving, it was one of those old car AGTO, and they were writing their initials in the year, in the wet concrete on the side of the house. I didn't see what they were writing, but I know that's what they were doing. What else would you write in concrete? And it was a recurring dream. I didn't pay much attention to it, because it's just a dream. Sometime later in real life, we were looking to buy a house, and the housing market in 21 was very bad. Then one afternoon, after putting our names down at 2 different houses, with very low hope, we went back home. And on the way, we had passed by this house with an open house sign, and I told my wife, you know what? Let's just go in, let's try our luck. Went into the house, and I went out by myself. And I got to the side of the house, and just like when I was in that kitchen, I stopped. I was shaking. There it is, the green convertible, GTO. I walked to the side of the garage, and I saw the initials and the year in concrete. All of a sudden, it's like a rush of intensity. I felt everything. I felt the happiness. I felt the nostalgia. I felt a laughter. I felt a shiver, despite all the emotion that the property has experienced. It shared some of that with me. So the realtor revealed that the owners retired and wanted to move to the United States and needed to sell his house. Usually you need to outbid the other buyer. The price would just go up. However, the realtor told me that she was just instructed by the owner, just before we showed up, to settle for $20,000 over the asking price. So that's what we did. We offered $20,000 above asking price, and we got the house. The house has been good, and I haven't had any paranormal experience here. My wife asked me, "Hey, have you seen anything unusual?" And I said, "No, this is a good house." The last thing is, all the haunts that happen while we go on vacation, there's been 2 that are significant. so we went to Indianapolis to attend a cousin's wedding. And it was a large group of us. We booked a large multi-room house. And the first thing I noticed when I put up was, this is a very nice Victorian house. Oh, but it looks very nice historic. It was in the historic part of Indianapolis. So one night I went to sleep pretty late, and I was tired from a day of driving and attending events. My wife was in the bathroom getting ready to sleep. I closed my eyes, and the light was on in the room. It was bright white light, and I felt the room getting darker through my closed eyelids. So I figured my wife get out of the bathroom, and she turned off the light. When I opened my eyes, and what seemed like a second later, the room had a flickering yellow hue, as if the room was lit by candle lights. Standing at the foot of the bed was an older, white man in colonial attire. He had a saber or a sword by his side. I looked over to my right, and there was an older, white woman with salt and pepper hair in a white nightgown. The older woman was looking into the distance, but the police officer was looking straight at me. I was scared. I pushed myself to sit up, and as soon as I sat up, the older woman turned to look at me. I realized I am awake. I'm wide awake. This is not a sleep paralysis. I closed my eyes. I didn't want to look at them. I saw myself standing on the sidewalk at an intersection. I looked up and saw the signs for the cross street. Pennsylvania and 22nd. A sedan was speeding in its cross intersection, but it hit a pedestrian. The pedestrian's face zoomed into mine, and I saw her face. It was an older black woman with short, buzz-cut hair, and then a name appeared in my head. Wendy. That's when I opened my eyes and I yelled out help. My wife came out of the bathroom, and she asked what happened. I told her what I've seen, and she said, "Let's just go to sleep." I was very unnerved by what I saw. It was two apparitions and a memory or something of someone getting run over. So in the morning, I looked on the map, and Pennsylvania. 22nd is one street over of where we stay. We stay on the 21st in Pennsylvania. I rationalized that. I must have seen Pennsylvania and 22nd on the map while I was driving, and I must have incorporated that location into what I saw. But I had no explanation for the colonial officer and the woman. I had no explanation for the name Wendy. I Googled car accident in Wendy and that location, but nothing came up. I couldn't explain it. A couple nights later, I sat in the kitchen to talk to one of the uncles. It was early in the morning, again, 3 in the morning, and I sat on the table across from him. Behind his head on the wall was an oval vanity mirror. It was angled downward where I sat. I could see his reflection and mine. We were in the middle of a conversation, and I looked up in the mirror, and there was a dark shadow figure moving on the wall behind me. It stopped, waved its right hand, and continued moving out of view. I turned around right away, and of course there was nothing there. I didn't tell anyone until we got home, and I told my wife. The last thing that happened was in Chicago, Illinois. I visited Chicago in 22 to attend for graduation for my master's degree, though we stayed at a hotel near the university. When we put up in a taxi, the hotel did not look exactly like what I expected. It was a thin and long building, and of course it's in historic Chicago, so we went out to the floor that we were in. I was talking to my wife about what we're going to do tomorrow. so I didn't really pay attention to the interiors. Of the elevator, we got off the elevator, and I looked for the signs to the room. But the first thing I noticed was how wide the hallway was. Usually, the hotel hallways is barely enough to fit 2 people, but this hallway was a good 8-foot distance, and it reminded me of one location. It looks like a hospital hallway. I told my wife, "Hey, honey, this looks like a hospital hallway," and she's like, "Yeah, it does. It's weirdly very wide." We passed a door frame on the way to the room, and it reminded me of the safety double doors that the hospitals would have. We made it to a room, and we went to sleep. It was late. I was fast asleep when I heard the alarms. In my head or in my ears, I'm still not sure. In the background, I heard people talking and yelling. I woke up to this noise. I opened my eyes then, and the monitor alarm was gone. But the background talking noise, it echoed for like a good second before it disappeared. In the morning, I told my wife, hey, I rationalized to my wife that the air vent must have carried the voices of people talking in the other rooms, and I must have gotten woken up by then. We got up, we went to breakfast in the lobby, so we got in the elevator to go down. This time I was fresh. I was awake. I read the poster that was on the elevator. So this hotel used to be the Cook County Hospital. It's one of the first hospitals established in Chicago. It's a Civil War hospital. They had the first medical internship. And I'm a blood bank and transfusion specialist. And Cook County is the first hospital with the first institutional blood bank in the whole world. I read about it, but I never looked up what the hospital looked like. The wide hallway, the monitor alarm, the people speaking. It made sense then that I would hear it. I didn't feel scared. I felt emotional as a fanboy, basically, because I was in a historic location. I had to have a moment with myself to realize internally that it's not all these places. It's probably me. Growing up with passive family, where we don't talk about these things, it's hard for me to come to that realization. I tried to rationalize and disprove as much as I could, but I would accept the things I could not. With paranormal activities, you'll only get it if it happens to you. Auditory apparitions. They're fine as long as they don't make a noise. It's the ones that talk to you that's extra scary. Because the second sense of hearing is more of a confirmation that this is real. This is happening. When you have 2 or more senses confirming that it's happening, it's no longer something subconscious. It's real. It's conscious. Just a side note here. Our storyteller today mentioned Wendell, a missing link in his story. He had no idea how it was connected to anything. Well, it turns out our editor and sound designer, Sarah Voorhees Wendell, got us scared today when she heard it. Was it just a coincidence? If you have a true story that you want to share, head on over to TrueScaryStory.com and fill out the form. And if you're following the show, we'll get to hear another story next week. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. 1. Please listen to the story, 3 Chilling Paranormal Encounters. My name is Edwin, and here are Diana's, Vanessa's, and Adrian's true scary stories. Growing up when I was little, we used to go to Mexico every summer. We are from the state of Juarez, Mexico. My grandparents used to own a plot of land. Technically, they still own it, but they passed away a few years ago. And so my aunts and uncles still live there. There's about 5 houses on that plot of land. Their main house and then the other 4 houses. My family's land is actually built on top of a cemetery. And so, there's always been different stories of things that they've seen, things that have happened. My dad owned the house that was located nearest to where you know this cemetery is. They would always hear banging on the walls. My mom, who is a non-believer of anything paranormal, one time stayed there, and she was woken up in the middle of the night with banging all on the walls, and it wasn't just on once, it was just all over the house, just banging all over the house. During breakfast time with everybody around, she's like, yeah, I didn't get good sleep last night because there was banging on the walls, Maybe something happened with the neighbor and she was using the hammer. And they're like, no, that's actually very common in that house. As a matter of fact, my other uncle who lives a house over has also heard those bangings. And so he came out in the middle of the night to see who was, causing chaos out there. He brought some type of weapon out with him just to make sure he had, something to protect himself with, because he really thought it was a person. And he said he went all around that house and did not find anybody there. My grandma had gone to a flea market out in Mexico, and she bought a dresser with an attached mirror to it at this flea market intended for my uncle. She took it to my uncle's house. They had it set up some time passed by. One night my uncle was asleep and something woke him up. He felt this uneasy feeling, like somebody was just looking at him. He woke up, and he was kind of scanning the room. It's dark. He can't really see anything. He's still half asleep, and in the corner of the room, he sees a little boy who's about anywhere from 8 to 10 years old. He's just looking at him, and he tries to call out to him to get his attention. Little boy is not moving. He's not doing anything other than just staring at my uncle, so my uncle decides to grab, like his cover or a pillow to throw at him to, get a reaction out of this little boy to see what are you doing in my room? The little boy jumps from where he was to the dresser and disappears into the mirror. Fast forward maybe the next summer. My adult cousin and her son, who was at the time around that same age, went to Mexico to visit for the summertime. We all know we all go back home to visit for vacation. My uncle lends her his room so she could sleep in there with her kid in the middle of the night at around the same time. Her little boy starts shaking her mommy. Mommy, mommy. Wake up, there's a little boy. Oh, mijo. Go to sleep, go to sleep. You're dreaming, there's nothing there, mommy. Mommy. There's a little boy, and he's smiling at me, and his teeth are ugly. No, mijo. There's nothing there, go back to sleep. Finally, he gives up, and he goes back to sleep. During breakfast the next morning, my cousin is complaining of how tired she is because her little boy didn't let her sleep. And they are telling the story to my uncle, who's in a house that belongs to, and my grandma. And so my uncle and my grandma kind of just stare at each other because they know what happened to him. She goes on to tell them that, yeah, he kept trying to wake me up, that there was a little boy in the room, and that the little boy was smiling at him. And my uncle is like, well, that kind of happened to me too. He proceeds to tell her his story. Needless to say, my cousin and her son did not sleep there. The following night, that same dresser and mirror ends up in the possession of an aunt of mine here in the United States. My aunt, very superstitious. She had gone to see like a witch doctor at this time. The mirror and the dresser are put away in the garage. She knows the story of this mirror. Why she has possession of this mirror, I don't know, even though she knows the story. Anyway, she goes and sees a witch doctor for unrelated reasons. And this witch doctor gives her this little blanket, which is like a little pillow. A green one and a red one. One was intended for like luck, and the other one was intended for money. And she always carried these little pillows with her, in her purse. One day she was rummaging through her purse, and she notices that those pillows are gone. At the time, my aunt had, teenage sons. And so she kind of confronted them about it, and was like, hey, you guys were going through my purse. My little pillows are gone. Why were you guys going through my purse? They all deny. They're like, no, Mom. It wasn't us, we didn't do anything like that. They end up finding those pillows by the mirror, in the garage. And no idea how they got there. Once that happened to her specifically. That's when they're like, okay, no. We need to get rid of this mirror. Something is wrong with this mirror. We got it at a flea market. It's in Mexico, so something or somebody must have done something to this mirror that, would have caused, like, this little boy to get stuck in there. And so ultimately, that's what led to their decision to get rid of that mirror. Everything stopped, like there was no other occurrences with a little boy or anything going missing after they broke it. Essentially, we've always been scared that that land was built over a cemetery, because there's been other, like, small occurrences that have happened, but I think that's the creepiest one. This took place May of 2015. Me and my husband were going to New Orleans for the first time. We have a timeshare thing, so we were able to get a 2-story room. We were going to be there for 2 whole weeks. For whatever reason, they would not let us stay in the same room. For both weeks, we had to stay in one room for 1 week, and then they had to check us out and put us in another room for the second week. This happened the last Friday that we were there, on the first week, if that makes sense. When checking into the room at first, you're looking at it and it's so cool. It totally looked like what you would think New Orleans would look like. It had like brick wall. There was weird kind of paintings in there. And I remember even walking in there. I was taking pictures and showing the video and everything. Walking throughout everything. I remember walking upstairs and getting like a, I don't know about this. I brush it off. Because we were new arrivals for the first time. I was super excited. There was a second room in there too. I just didn't like it. I don't want to be in here by myself type thing. The last night that we were there in the first room, I knew that I was dreaming. Because I remember we were in the master bedroom. Like I said, this was like a 2-story room. I remember sitting up in my bed, and I kept hearing things. I felt like it was cabinets opening and closing. Opening closings and doors. Opening and closing, opening and closing. I knew no one was in our room. It was just me and my husband. I knew my husband was in the bathroom. I don't know how I knew that. But I knew that my husband was in the bathroom. I was sitting in bed, and I asked, "Hey, are you not hearing this?" When I said that, I felt something pull my leg. I freaked out. All of a sudden, I felt like someone grabbed both my ankles and pulled me down. When they pulled my ankles down, I lay flat on my back on my bed. When I woke up, I couldn't move. I couldn't move like at all. The only thing I could move was my eyelids. I was like, what is going on? I was in the exact same room we were sleeping in. So the first dream took place in the room. When I woke up and couldn't move, I knew I was in the room, and I knew. I could see my husband laying right next to me, in arm's length. All of a sudden, I remember two different things or entities. I don't know what they were, but I felt one hand on one shoulder and another hand on my other shoulder. They were holding me down. It wasn't hard, but I could feel them hold me down. The only thing I can remember is them looking, like the Monet painting of the screaming person. All I saw was they were like misty, and all I saw was like two eye sockets and a long face. I couldn't move anything but my eyelids. For the life of me, I just wanted for him to wake me up, because he was right next to me in bed. All of a sudden, I hear both of those entities. In my voice, in my own voice. I felt like they were making fun of me. I felt like they were mocking me. Like, how you can't talk, how you can't talk. I could feel myself wanting to cry. I just closed my eyes. I was praying to Jesus. I was praying to God, Holy Spirit. I was praying to everybody. My dad had passed 3 years prior. So I even called out to my dad like, "Dad, if you can hear me, please." I had called out even to my grandfather, my paternal grandfather who had died in 2012. I was like, "Please help me, please." As soon as I called out to my grandfather, within maybe 10 seconds, I woke up. I was able to wake up. I immediately woke up my husband, and I was like, I just had a bad dream. I didn't want to tell him everything, because I knew he was dead asleep. So he just comforted me. But I ended up praying for the next 20 minutes, and just thanking God that I was able to wake up from that dream. That was the scariest thing that I ever experienced. I ended up telling my mom at least a year later. She freaked that she was like, "What? Oh my God, I can't believe that happened to you." She totally believed me though. She's like, "I'm sorry that happened to you." I remember the resort that we were staying at was called the Quarter House. It was built in 1830. I know it was really old, and I thought that was really cool because I was like, oh my God, we're staying in a fairly old building. I love history of stuff, but I did not think that that was going to happen. I just thought it was cool because it was really old. If I would have known it was haunted, I would not stay because I'm like such a scaredy cat. Even to this day, I have dreams within dreams, but they're not like that, but they're not like that, but where I wake up like sleep paralysis. But I've had dreams within dreams. This happened to me 19 or 20 years ago. I'm 38 years old. I come from a Hispanic family, and we tend to be friends with our cousins because we have so many of them. I would hang out with a girl cousin of mine very often. One day, she invited me over. Her mom had got a new place. I hadn't been there. I took a bus across town to get to this address. When I got there, my cousin was there with her older sister. Right away, they're like, "Hey, glad you're here. We were just about to go to the store. Do you want to go with us?" I was done with the California heat. And I was like, "No, I'll stay here." And she says, "Great. My daughter, she's asleep. Keep an eye on her. We're just going to go to the corner convenience store. When we get back." They leave, and I stay there watching TV. As soon as they leave, the door closed. The little girl sits up and starts asking me over and over again, "Where's my mommy at? Where's my mommy at?" I would answer her every time. It's almost as if she just didn't hear me. Speaking to her, and would continue to ask. After a while, I just figured, I'm just going to watch TV. Sit here, little girl, still asking me the same questions. but it could have been 15 or 20 minutes. I hear the metal door, it swings open. Makes that sound that you hear on these doors. Then I can hear the wooden door swing open. Then I hear my cousin. She's laughing, as if they're joking. She says, "Ha, Joanna." I hear what sounds like a plastic bag landing on a wooden table. The exact sound you hear of a cheap corner store bag. I look at the little girl and I respond to her. "Your mom's home." I walk into the kitchen. There's absolutely nobody there. The doors are closed. Everything's closed. There's nothing there. I walk right back to the room thinking, what did I hear? What's going on? The little girl's still sitting there, but now she's staring at me. She starts asking me all over again. Where her mommy's at, she's probably asked me 15, 20 times where her mom's at. In the same tone over and over again. A few minutes later, I hear the wooden door rubbing across the floor. I hear my cousin again laughing, and I hear her say, "Ah." F in Joanna. I hear the bag with the soda hit the table. I'm too scared to get up. I sit there for a minute. I'm not saying anything to a girl. She's still asking me for her mother. All of a sudden, my cousin pops her head around the corner. I jump up, run to the kitchen, and I tell her, "I heard that you guys came, but you weren't here." Both my cousin and her older sister just staring at me, like it's not a big deal. After I tell them what happens to me, they tell me when my mother gets home, "We want you to tell her what happened to you." An hour or two pass. My aunt gets home and she's not surprised. She starts telling me that when she first moved into that house, my aunt, at that time, she was a single mother. When they first moved into that house, she would constantly catch her daughter in her closet, going through the boxes making a mess. My aunt, getting tired of telling her to get out of the closet, she tells her, "What are you doing in there? Why do you keep going in my closet? And what are you searching for?" Her daughter looked at her and told her, "The little girl is telling me that there's toys in here. That's why I'm in here." She tells me she spoke to the owner as she asked him, "There's been weird things happening in this house. Has anybody ever said anything? Or told you anything the owner himself was like? I've had a hard time keeping this place rented. I have heard some things I don't believe too much. I haven't experienced anything myself." He never stayed there. He said that. There was a family that had passed away in that home. A mother and a father, and they had a daughter. They had passed away in that house. My aunt lived there for a number of years. But one thing that had happened to my aunt there, she was dating a man for a while, and they would go out. Sometimes he'd go out on his own. She'd stay home. One night, he had gone out with his friends. She stayed home. She had work. She was tired. She fell asleep in the living room on the couch. Late at night, she woke up to the sounds of somebody getting there. She saw the figure of who she thought was her boyfriend, coming home from a night out with his friends. She said, "I just glanced and told them, 'You're going to sit with me.' And she gave him space at the end of the couch. She saw this figure sit down. Later on, at 3 a.m, there was knocking at the door. She gets up, opens the door. It's her boyfriend, just getting home and being dropped off by his friends. I know other people that things happen to in that house. My sister has a story when she graduated high school. She took one of her high school friends to that house. My mother had gone to the casino with that aunt. This girl, she felt strange sitting in the living room. She kept glancing to her left, where there was a small bathroom. The door looked like it was trying to open. She couldn't hear anything, but the light was on, and then it was open. When she glanced back, the door was still open, but now there was a doll sitting on the sink, and face out of the bathroom. A lot of our family have known that things were happening at that house. I talked to one of my other cousins before I did this interview, and he was even like, yeah, everybody that's been there knows that. There's something weird going on at this house. Everybody doesn't experience the same thing there, but everybody there says that they can feel something there, watching you. You get this feeling as if something's waiting. It's waiting to do something to you. After that happened to me, I would feel uneasy in there. Years ago, I remember trying to look it up about the internet, probably 20 years ago when I was 19. I never really found anything. I know when I looked up the house, I know this house gets rented quite often because it's not a very nice house. Super tiny. It almost looks like a studio with an extra room. I don't think people stay that long. My aunt was one of those people. She was older. She believes in God and everything. It's where she's like, watch. Just pray. Things will leave me alone. But she didn't want to stay there. After a while, she felt like something was trying to be on top of her, hold her down. She needed a struggle, and she got up, caught her breath and stuff. Like that. I had heard stuff like that from that house. I remember seeing an old house being remodeled, our neighbor's house. There would always be stories about this house being haunted. They would rent it. I never saw anything myself. What made me believe, I think, if at all maybe people do sense things, is the neighbors would always say, this little house was haunted. It shared the property light with our house the day that we were remodeling it. I'm probably like in the 6th grade and I'm being nosy. I'm out there, all of a sudden I see that one of the contractor guys, he's like, hey, everybody stop. Go call the owner, because we need to figure something out. They're telling me to go away. I'm like, number. I'm on my property, you can tell me. Go away. Under the house that'd been in that house. They had a cement floor. They had to redo it, because they had cracked. When they lifted up the cement, I'm standing there when they lifted up the cement. There was a human skeleton. It still had clothes on, a flannel shirt and jeans. I remember clearly. I saw construction workers pick up the bones, throw it in the garbage, and continue working. The girls that lived in there, they would see things upstairs and hear sound. I don't know if maybe that has something to do with that, but that's what I saw at that home. When you're a kid, you don't think about these things. But as an adult, I can remember. Because it was such a big deal. Like I was like, oh, my God, they found a dead person. But when I think back on what they were doing at that house, when I tell you they found him under the cement, the foundation, they didn't dig. He was in between the poured cement and the dirt. It wasn't like an old burial site or anything. If you picked up a broken piece of cement on the street, it was like right there. I remember seeing hair. It was old and it bunched up, almost a red brownish color, like bronze. That's what I saw. So it was like the skeleton that's still. It had hair there. It had a flannel shirt on, obviously all beat up and the colors faded. But the jeans, I guess I don't know. I remember seeing the jeans. You think stuff like that would fall apart. They had holes in it, but it was still pretty intact. I remember him reaching for the leg. I had jeans on, but when he pulled, the bones that you have in your waist area, you can see them separate. The long leg bone was still in the pan. So then, They had to pick up the bones individually and throw them away. I remember looking up that. But later as an adult, I didn't know when that house was built, even where to start looking to even think anything. But how many more people are under cement slabs somewhere? This house was on a corner lot. My aunt owned this property. These are older neighborhoods in Fresno, where you had more land. At some point, my aunt, or whoever owned the house before her, they had built a small studio apartment right behind her house and to the right. They built a 2-story, 2-bedroom. It was shaped like a little square. They had built that there. One of my other aunts was staying in the house, right behind her, and they were renting the 2-story one. The reason why they had lifted the floor was because apparently the foundation of the house wasn't sitting right anymore. There were cracks on the walls. The house was shifting, I guess. They had to pour the cement on the base floor of the house, rip up the old stuff and throw it away, and then pour new cement. I remember in their living room right there, where they'd sit and watch TV all the time, was where that crack was. And that's where the body was under that crack. The foundation cracked where that dead body was. Up next, be sure to check out my other podcast called Scary Story Podcast. And if you're into more historical and mysteries, stuff like that, be sure to check out Horror Story. I'll see you over there if you want to support the show. Head on over to Scary Plus, calm as always. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon, everyone. See you soon, everyone. Please listen to the story, Demon in the Barn, while exploring an abandoned farmhouse in rural California. 2 friends came face to face with something dark, an encounter so chilling that it still haunts them. Decades later, my name is Edwin, and here is Dory's true scary story. I grew up on my grandparents' and great-grandparents' property in the Central Valley of California. In the 1800s, my family settled there. I'm not sure how they got the land. I think they got it from the Native American Indian tribe. That was in the area. I think it was the Miwoks. My great-grandparents built a big, huge custom home on the property. Had peach orchards, then walnut orchards, almond orchards. Then my grandparents built a big ranch house on that property as well. When I was a teenager, we moved onto the property, onto a separate house next to my grandparents' house. So we spent a lot of time outside. I had horses and whatnot. Our property was 40 acres, and we were up on a bluff. The bluff overlooked the top of walnut orchards. So we would go down, especially in the summertime. We'd either ride the horses or walk, and we'd take this one road that went straight down, of almost a mile, and our property ended at the river, to a day where this story comes into play. This summer, my friend and I, we were going to walk down there just killing time. We usually went to the east. This time I said, let's go to the west. Because last week, when I was with another friend riding our horses, I rode past this old house that was sitting back off the river, off the road. You could tell from the road far away it's abandoned. I said, let's go check it out, see if there's anything cool there. So we start walking down there. It's a small little white wooden, 1-bedroom little square house. Immediately behind it is a very large wooden barn. It was clear that this house was probably built like in the 20s turn of the century. It's an old dilapidated house. It's in the middle of nowhere. There's just, for as far as you can see in any direction, it's just orchards. So as we were approaching it, we were being kind of quiet because we didn't know if there were. Like any other random people out there, it was just We were just two girls, so we wanted to be careful that we weren't going to bump into some scary dudes down there. So we kind of did a big circle around the barn in this house to make sure nobody was there, and we were quiet as we were doing it. This barn is massive, huge barn, the size of a 2-story building. But there was no second story in it. It was just really high rafters. The doors to the barn were slid open. There was probably maybe a 5 or 6 feet space between the back wall of where the house was and the back wall of the barn. And the barn was totally intact. There was nothing wrong with it. It was that thing was solid. The house, on the other hand, half of the walls, one half of the house. There were no walls left. Trees had crashed into it. Branches, the leaves were everywhere. The front part of it was intact. But the back wall of the house and the back, right side of the house, the walls were gone. But you can still see kind of the footing. 3/4 of the wall will still stand. We go around to the back of this barn as we were making our loop around to make sure no one is there. There's an old tractor, completely covered by the weeds and dry grass, 20 feet, 30 feet away from the barn behind us. As we're facing these barn doors, we're looking inside of it. You could tell it's not used anymore. There's cobwebs from ceiling to floor, dust motes floating through the air. It was late in the afternoon, sun shining through. Everything is covered in this real fine layer of dust. It's clear no one uses this barn. On the right-hand side of the barn, there was like a workbench that just had odds and ends of stuff that people just never used anymore. Old tools and cans and bottles, suitcases. Not a whole lot of stuff, but it was. There was nothing really of any value over there. On the left-hand side of the barn was big railroad ties. Those heavy wooden railroad ties. Probably 20 or 30 of them. But it probably took up. Like 15 feet long by maybe 4 feet high. They were just stacked, not very neatly. You could tell they'd been there for years and years. And years. Cobwebs all over them. Hay all over them. Dust, and there were barrel hoops thrown on top of them. And pieces of wire. It used to be maybe a grape vineyard that was. In the empty fields that were around us. They also had peach orchards down there. So there was a lot of old orchard equipment. Wooden things, and metal rings, and wire. And then, at the back, left corner, all the way up to, actually, the whole back wall of the barn, was hay bales that had fallen apart, and were just piled up there. It was probably 5 feet high, by maybe the width of the house. There must have been tons of bales of hay there, that fallen apart over 10 or 20 years. And it's just laying there covered in dust, covered in cobwebs. So as we walk through, we're kind of breaking through a few cobwebs, and I'm afraid of spiders. So I'm giggling about, I don't want to see any spiders. And we walk around and we're looking. Maybe we'll see some old, cool tool, or some old, cool bottle or something interesting. Fun old antique. What not to take with us. We walk around in there. We don't see anything of interest. And we walk back out. We go around to the front of the house. On the front porch is a whole bunch of old, abandoned washers and dryers. And from probably the 50s. As we get into the main part of this little square house, we walked into where there used to be a wall. But there was no more wall there. It was only about 2 feet high, like the foundation. And the bottom part of the wall was there. My friend goes in, and as we walk into the house, if we were standing in the dead center of this perfect square, We were both looking at the back wall of this barn, because there's no wall there to the house. The wall of that house was gone. To the left is a kitchen. You can walk into this little tiny kitchen, and then going on that side also is one little bedroom, and I stayed right where I was, in the center of this house, and I was looking at what was probably the living room, and there was no wall there. There was a pile of just junk on the ground. There's also branches, leaves, everything kind of mixed up in this pile of junk. So my friend goes to the front part. She's looking through the other rooms, and I'm looking into this pile. And as I'm kind of using a stick, and I'm pushing things around to see what's in this pile, I see this staff like a walking stick. It's probably about 4 or 5 feet long, and it is intricately carved. Derek's carving over every inch of it. It's very detailed, ornate carving, and so I'm like poking it with a stick, looking at it, squinting, like, what is that? My friend calls me kind of in a panic, I startle and I go, kind of hustling back to the front part of the house, where she is. A lizard scared her or something. I said, come here, you gotta see what's in this pile. This thing's cool. So, we walk back to where I was standing at this pile, and from where we're standing, we are probably 5 or 6 feet from the back wall of the barn. If you've ever been in an old barn, or like an old wooden fence, you could see kind of through the cracks of the wood, just a little tiny bit. You can see through the cracks of the wood. And so I get to that pile and I'm like, look, there's this stack here. I start poking around in the pile and there's nothing there. It's not there. And she goes, what? What did you see? And I said, there was this stick. And as soon as I started talking about it, there came a sound from inside that barn that was so deafeningly loud. It sounded like somebody had dropped a freight train inside that barn. The ground shook, and it was like whatever was at the back of the barn, where the doors were. It was like a train, or it was louder than a truck. It was whatever it was. It was so loud it was barreling into the barn so fast, so furious you could hear the wood flying. You could hear those barrel rings flying. You could hear the railroad ties flying. You could hear the hay, everything scattering in there. The walls were shaking. The ground was shaking. The air was just reverse. It was so loud, everything just moving in there. And then, whatever it was, hit the back of the wall of that barn, right in front of us, eye level. And you could just hear this guttural growl and breathing on the other side of this wall. And this wasn't a person. This wasn't a car. This was a sound that I can't even describe how incredibly loud this was. We're both frozen, staring at this wall. Through the slats of this wall, we start to kind of inch our way to the right, to kind of walk out away from this house, staring at the wall as we do. You can tell something's on the other side of the wall. You can see it. Dust is kind of coming through the slats of the wood. You could see eyes through those slats, but you can't make out the shape. You could see something on the other side of the wall. It was dark black. The eyes were like a yellowish, then kind of red. As we started facing the wall, slowly inching our way out of the house, not taking our eyes off of this wall. It's still breathing and following us, and you could hear things moving on the other side of that wall. We come around where there's a clearing, and we take off running. We don't look back. We take off running, and we must have ran 3/4 of a mile before one of us just literally collapses on the ground for running so fast. We look at each other, We look around, make sure nothing's following. Nothing's following us. We look at each other. What the heck just happened? And we start reliving and recounting what we saw. What we heard when we both first started talking. We couldn't believe what had just happened. Party you wanted to say, this can't be what I thought it was. So as I start explaining what I saw, my friend Jennifer starts finishing my sentences, and I'm doing the same for her. Like, did you see the skin? It looked like it was leather. Did you see his eyes? Yeah. The eyes were red. What was that? We saw. Why was that so loud? What? How was that barn still standing? As we're sitting there, catching our breath, another friend who's like a younger brother to me comes up, because he was going down to the river to go fishing. He's like, "What are you guys doing?" We tell him what happened. He's like, "You guys are full of crap. There's nothing there. You guys are crazy." I'm like, "Dude, I am not kidding you. I have never lied to you. I am not joking." He was like, "All right, then show me." We get up. We start walk back there. I said, "I'll walk back there, but I'm not going in there again. I'm never going back in there." So we walk back over there, take a big wide berth around it. You know, but we go back to where the barn. I said, "I just want to see what." "You go in that barn and you'll see there is. That place is torn to shreds." So we get to the very back, and I'm far away, and I'm looking at the inside side of this barn, and it looks like exactly like it did when we first got there. There's still cobwebs hanging on the ceiling. Everything's in the exact same place. Nothing has been moved. No dust's askew anywhere. It's exactly the same. I tell him, I was like, "Hey, go over there in that house and go look in that pile over there and see if there's a long stick in that." Set him in there like a guinea pig, and he's stupid. So he went in there, and he's like, "There's nothing in here. There's just trash in here. There's old cans and like leaves and trash. And there's nothing in here." "What are you talking about?" I go back, I start doodling. Later that evening, I'm like doodling. Like, I can't picture the images that were on that stick, but I've never seen anything like it. Later, as Jennifer and I talk about that years later, and for days after that, the only thing I can say to describe what we saw was a demon. I have a hard time telling the story to people, because no one's going to believe you. But at that time, I didn't watch scary stories. I was raised in a very religious family. We weren't allowed to talk about that stuff, be involved in that stuff. Like, it was not part of my world, part of just my experience. It wasn't something I was looking for. Wasn't anything I was expecting. But I know what I saw. And it was from that point on that it really made me wonder what else is out there. Because I can't explain what I heard and what I saw. Since that time, as an adult, now, it has made me interested in what else is out there. There's something else that goes on in our world. That's more than just, flesh and bone. There's something else out there. So I've been interested in reading and studying, trying to figure out, but a little bit afraid of finding out exactly what I saw since that day. There are very few things that actually scare me. Almost everything else is tangible. You can fight your way out of it. There was no fighting. You knew you were completely powerless to this. That terrified me to my core. To share your story with us, head on over to True Scary Story. calm and fill out the form. And if you know of somebody who might like this podcast, send it to them. Links are in your app and in the description of this episode. And if you want to support the show and listen without ads, try out Scary Plus. It's free for 2 whole weeks and then 4. $99 a month. You can cancel whenever you want. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary. Everyone, see you soon. Please listen to the story, The Girl with Black Hair. My story begins after my parents' divorce. They wanted to co-parent and live in the same house. They decided to move to a new city in Valencia, Venezuela, around 2006. 2007, we finally settled in this house. That was really close to my new school. This house was inside a gated neighborhood. Our house was the last one on the street and had a koi pond, a huge tree in the entrance that made the house look more shaded. It was a big, 1-story house with 5 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms. Right when we came inside, the house gave me a really weird, creepy vibe. My room was next to my dad's bathroom and bedroom. My dad's bathroom had a big, cool shower that had glass doors. There was no roof, only a mesh roof. But a still rainwater and small leaves will get inside. Sometimes I really like taking showers there. I had to get inside my dad's room to use the bathroom, and I always felt like there was a really welcoming, bad vibe in his room. It was always the coldest room in the whole house. I didn't like being in his room because of that. I used to enter and leave in a rush every time I use his bathroom. When we moved, we had some boxes and things in the studio go missing. My mom couldn't find an error again. My mom and my siblings started seeing black shadows. In different parts of the house, we always have the feeling of being watched, and an unwelcome feeling. There was this day, I was in the studio using the computer. You could see the studio through a window. In the living room, my brother was in the living room when he saw a man behind me, watching what I was doing. One afternoon, I was in my room, doing my homework and listening to music. Suddenly, I heard someone pounding with their face on my window. Really hard. I was really scared. I was frozen for a moment, until I thought maybe someone was breaking into the house. It had happened before I opened the window, but I didn't see anything. I decided to look in the backyard, since you could see the backyard from my window. I saw a woman running really fast to her right. She had long hair. She was wearing a long dress. She was translucent. There was this time that I was checking myself in the mirror instead of seeing my reflection. I saw someone else. It quickly disappeared. I stay in the house while my mom went out for groceries. I was doing my homework, and suddenly I felt someone watching me. The air felt heavy. I got really scared. But I call my mom when I call her. Someone growled really close to me. I ran and waited outside my house until my mom arrived. Another time I was in my mom's room, when suddenly I had chills on my whole body, and I felt someone scratch my arm. I experienced a lot of sleep paralysis in this house. My sister also had a few experiences in this house. She was in her room with her family dog when he started growling and barking. My sister saw a girl with black hair and white dress walking around and disappeared quickly. During a thunderstorm on this day, my sister was in the bathroom, and when she stepped out, lightning struck nearby. The lights dimmed, and when it came back, she saw the air again. There was a fire that occurred once. For some unknown reason, luckily, a gardener and other neighbors helped, taking the fire down. After all these occurrences, we had a friend whose aunt read tarot cards. I was really skeptical when she read mine. She said there was an evil entity sent from an ex-girlfriend of my dad. She was a Santara. She sent evil spirits to keep us away from my dad because she was jealous of my mom, my sister and I relationship. And there was one spirit that was in love with my dad. They also mentioned that I had a third eye. And I was able to feel more of these paranormal activities. A few months later, we have to move out because our lease had ended. We moved to a new house, which was a relief. But things didn't stop. My mom was in the kitchen. She saw this girl with black hair and white long dress. She thought it was me, and she was asking her to put away the groceries. But she ignored her and then disappeared. I was always a target when I was doing my homework. This time, the girl walked in the hallway in front of my room and quickly disappeared again. It's another time that I was really upset. I was ripping some old pictures, and I was going to harm myself with a small scissor. I went through depression and had a tendency to self-harm. During these years, I had it on my table, the seizure. But suddenly it moved away and it fell on the ground. It was really strange, because I thought, did I move it by accident? But it was not in the edge of the table. I didn't feel anything strange. But I don't know, maybe somebody was trying to protect me. Or maybe something was just there, tried to do something and just fell. After these things stopped happening, my dad, he just didn't believe us. And he thinks that we were just crazy. My mom, she really thinks something. What's going on in the house? And she had her experiences. Not as much as me and my sister. We're like the ones that had more things. My family, they all believe that something was going on in that house. I talked to a friend. He was a neighbor in that first house. He says there was something going on in the house. But they didn't know what happened. The owners of the house. They sell it to for a cooking class. That didn't work after they did a clandestine casino. Now it's a restaurant. Up next, if you want to listen to even more ghost stories, check out our other show hosted by Michelle. The cover looks like a newspaper clipping. Real callers and very creepy. Thank you very much for listening. See you soon. Please listen to the story, The Girl with Black Hair. My story begins after my parents' divorce. They wanted to co-parent and live in the same house. They decided to move to a new city in Valencia, Venezuela, around 2006. 2007, we finally settled in this house. That was really close to my new school. This house was inside a gated neighborhood. Our house was the last one on the street and had a koi pond, a huge tree in the entrance. That made the house look more shaded. It was a big, one-story house with 5 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms. Right when we came inside, the house gave me a really weird, creepy vibe. My room was next to my dad's bathroom and bedroom. My dad's bathroom had a big, cool shower that had glass doors. There was no roof, only in a mesh roof. But a still rainwater and small leaves will get inside. Sometimes I really like taking showers there. I had to get inside my dad's room to use the bathroom, and I always felt like there was a really welcoming, bad vibe in his room. It was always the coldest room in the whole house. I didn't like being in his room because of that. I used to enter and leave in a rush every time I use his bathroom. When we moved, we had some boxes and things in the studio go missing. My mom couldn't find an error again. My mom and my siblings started seeing black shadows. In different parts of the house, we always have the feeling of being watched. and an unwelcome feeling. There was this day. I was in the studio using the computer. You could see the studio through a window. In the living room, my brother was in the living room when he saw a man behind me, watching what I was doing. One afternoon, I was in my room, doing my homework and listening to music. Suddenly, I heard someone pounding with their face on my window. Really hard. I was really scared. I was frozen for a moment, until I thought maybe someone was breaking into the house. It had happened before I opened the window, but I didn't see anything. I decided to look in the backyard. Since you could see the backyard from my window, I saw a woman running really fast to her right. She had long hair. She was wearing a long dress. She was translucent. There was this time that I was checking myself in the mirror instead of seeing my reflection. I saw someone else. It quickly disappeared. I stay in the house while my mom went out for groceries. I was doing my homework, and suddenly I felt someone watching me. The air felt heavy. I got really scared. But I call my mom when I call her. Someone growled really close to me. I ran and waited outside my house until my mom arrived. Another time I was in my mom's room, when suddenly I had chills on my whole body, and I felt someone scratch my arm. I experienced a lot of sleep paralysis in this house. My sister also had a few experiences in this house. She was in her room with her family dog, and he started growling and barking. My sister saw a girl with black hair and white dress walking around and disappeared quickly. During a thunderstorm on this day, my sister was in the bathroom, and when she stepped out, lightning struck nearby. The lights dimmed, and when it came back, she saw the air again. There was a fire that occurred once. For some unknown reason, luckily, a gardener and other neighbors helped, taking the fire down. After all these occurrences, we had a friend whose aunt read tarot cards. I was really skeptical when she read mine. She said there was an evil entity sent from an ex-girlfriend of my dad. She was a Santara. She sent evil spirits to keep us away from my dad because she was jealous of my mom, my sister and I relationship. And there was one spirit that was in love with my dad. They also mentioned that I had a third eye, and I was able to feel more of these paranormal activities. A few months later, we have to move out because our lease had ended. We moved to a new house, which was a relief, but things didn't stop. My mom was in the kitchen. She saw this girl with black hair and white long dress. She thought it was me, and she was asking her to put away the groceries, but she ignored her and then disappeared. I was always a target when I was doing my homework. This time, the girl walked in the hallway in front of my room and quickly disappeared again. It's another time that I was really upset. I was ripping some old pictures, and I was going to harm myself with a small scissor. I went through depression and had a tendency to self-harm. During these years, I had it on my table, the seizure, but suddenly it moved away and it fell on the ground. It was really strange because I thought, did I move it by accident? But it was not in the edge of the table. I didn't feel anything strange, but I don't know, maybe somebody was trying to protect me. Or maybe something was just there, tried to do something and just fell. After these things stopped happening, my dad, he just didn't believe us. And he thinks that we were just crazy. My mom, she really thinks something. What's going on in the house? And she had her experiences. Not as much as me and my sister. were like the ones that had more things. My family, they all believe that something was going on in that house. I talked to a friend. He was a neighbor in that first house. He says there was something going on in the house. But they didn't know what happened. The owners of the house. They sell it to for a cooking class. That didn't work after they did a clandestine casino. Now it's a restaurant. Up next. If you want to listen to even more ghost stories, check out our other show hosted by Michelle. The cover looks like a newspaper clipping. Real callers and very creepy. Thank you very much for listening. See you soon. Please listen to the story, Our Home on Cursed Grounds. The house that we were living in was built in 1946. Strange, weird things were happening. From my grandfather all the way up to me. My grandfather, he was the first one to experience stuff. He was full-blood Cherokee Indian. So he was all about the native, the tales. His first experience, he was in the army. He would go outside, do the perimeter check. And he said one night, when he was close to the alley, he saw this dog that didn't have a head, but you can hear a bark. At the same time, he sees this dog. Something from under the ground wraps around his legs and does not want to let him go. So he started praying in Cherokee. He was a prayer warrior, for sure. It eventually let him go, and he went in the house. That was the very first incident he had. My aunt had a lot going on with her too. She said that she saw him in the yard walking around, and she called out to him. He wouldn't answer. She finally said, "Dad." And when he turned around, he had laser red, glowing eyes that looked at her and then looked away. And she ran in the house, and my grandfather, he was in the house making a sandwich in the kitchen. When my aunt was around 12 years old or so, it was about midnight or something like that. So it was dark? It was really late? He said that he saw something carrying my aunt. I don't know if it's a demon or if it was. Whatever it was carrying my aunt. My grandfather, he asked, "Who are you?" He was a medicine man also, so he was never afraid of things like that. He was our ghost buster, if you will. He asked it, "Who are you? What do you want with my daughter?" Whatever it was, that thing got spooked from my grandfather. He said, "You need to leave. You're not going anywhere with my daughter." Whatever it was left did not come back to that house. Anyway, my grandmother, she used to work at a daycare center that was like down the street from the house, and my aunt, she would help her. One night, she had sent my aunt back to the house to go get some extra towels and extra bibs to bring back to the daycare center. My mom was out with friends. My uncle was out with friends. The only person that was in the house was my aunt. When she went there, she went to the room, was getting towels and bibs. When she looked up in the mirror, there was some tall thing standing behind her and put its hand on her shoulder. She said that the hand looked like it had very long, talon-like nails. She couldn't move. She said it was really cold. She looked down and looked back in the mirror, and it was gone. She tried to get out of the room. The door wouldn't open, like it was locked, but from the outside. And there was a lock on the inside, but not on the outside. She heard my uncle come in, and she thought that my uncle was playing tricks on her, because that's what brothers do. He let her out, and "I just got here. I don't know what y'all. I just got here." That was it for that night. She went back to the daycare center with my grandmother. I've always been able to see things. Even when I was a little kid, my grandmother had a grandfather clock. That had the glass door with pendulum. My cousin, my uncle, my aunt were staying with us for a little while. The adults got the rooms, and the kids. Of course, I made a pallet on the floor in the living room. Sometimes I couldn't sleep, actually. That was a lot of the time I couldn't sleep. I would be up and just looking around. And when I was about 4 or 5 is when this happened. And it kept happening like all the time. I would see this lady in the pendulum area of the clock. She was like a Victorian lady. Like she had the big poofy bun on top. And she had a Victorian lace dress that would button up all the way up the neck. She would always stare at me and smile. I remember one night, it was always between 2 and 3 in the morning. She actually held her hand out to me. She only did it one time. I don't know what that was about. I don't know if that was an ancestor. I don't know what that was. But I didn't feel threatened. I didn't feel. The kids are very susceptible to things like that. I never felt like it was bad. I was dating this person. That apparently was a very evil-spirited. You know, you don't really recognize things. When you first get into a relationship with someone, you're just all lovey-dovey, and nothing can break y'all kind of thing. I didn't realize that. There was something that's always around her. But my mother did not like this woman at all. Didn't know why. She just knows that she did not like her. Every time she was around, something would happen to my mom. One time, she fell out of nowhere. She just fell. And she said there was another time that she fell. It felt like something pushed her. My ex and me were sitting outside at the time. When that happened, things like that would happen with my mom. And nobody else, just my mom. I think one of the most terrifying experiences would be, I want to say it was November 1st of 2013, 2014. This person, she was the kind of person that stalked you. I didn't realize that this was going to be an issue. It apparently was. One night, I was out there with her trying to just keep the peace. On my street, there is no streetlights nearby. There is a streetlight on either end to the street, for the cross street, but there's nothing like in the middle. So where my house was just like pitch black almost, just the glare from the streetlights from afar, we're sitting there, we're talking. I see this dark figure walking towards the car, was dressed in all black. I don't even know if it had a face. It just was just all black. It slowly walked past the car. I'm looking by my driveway, 'cause we're parked on the street. My mom's car is parked in the driveway. There was no more room when this guy, or whatever it was, passed my driveway. They disappeared. Right in front of her face is disappeared. That freaked us both out, but it's like, okay, you know what? Things like this happen around my house all the time. Now, mind you, she drove a Nissan Sentra that was a 5-speed. So when you put a manual car in park, you normally put the emergency brake on. That car is not going nowhere. She was parked, had the emergency brake on. We were sitting there and just chilling and talking. All of a sudden, we feel this giant push on this car. The car moved from at least 10 to 15 feet forward. It's in park, and the emergency brake's on. So what do? We get out. We get out of the car. We look on the ground with my phone flashlight. And there is a broken brick on the ground that has an upside-down cross on it. We jetted to the 7th, 11 to get away from there. When we looked to the back of the car on the bumper, like something was underneath the car, pushing the car from the bumper. We drove back to my house. parked in the opposite direction. Now we pulled up. Everything that was on the ground was gone. The brick was gone. Both pieces of the brick was gone. Like somebody swept it up. I don't know who it was 2 a.m, but there was nothing on the ground. If someone was out, we would leave the dining room light on. Where the dining room was, it was catty corner to the front door. So you can see the light shining into the door. My front door was like about a 6.5-foot door, with a half-moon stained glass at the top. Now mind you, everyone in my house is about 5'3" at the most. There is no way that anyone in my family, in that house, could see out of that stained glass window. We're talking, starting to get into an argument. I look to my left, which is where my door was, and I saw a dark figure in the stained glass. I blinked a few times to make sure I was seeing what I was seeing. It was there. I looked away. I was like, oh my God. She looked over there. She saw it too. Then I look back. It was gone, like nothing was there. I did not go in my house until daylight, because I was not about to go and find out what that was. I've never seen something that scared me like that. There were times when me and my aunt would be sitting on the couch. Now mind you, this house, like I said, was built in 1946, so it didn't have central heat and air. It had a swamp cooler. It's the big thing that sits outside your house, and you have it connected to a water hose, or you water it every few hours. And it blows air like with a manual fan. It was the winter time when this happened. Me and my aunt were sitting on the couch while we were watching TV. We heard something walking, crushing leaves by the water cooler. There was this very demonic growl. That happened outside that night. And then we moved to the other couch. There was also demonic growling behind the couch. I had an ex that I was with at the time. I woke up. I want to say it was like 2:30. Something like that, about 2:30. I looked over, her back was facing me. Her room is pitch black. No lights. Not even from the bathroom, nothing was on. I turn over and I look at her. When I tell you, her head, and only her head, turned around to face me. When she faced me, her eyes opened up and they were the same red, glowing eyes in mine. My father had in Dallas. I got up, I went in the living room. It was dark. Her mother is there sitting in the dark and asked me, "What's the matter? You can't sleep." I said, "No, ma'am, I cannot." "What are you doing in the dark?" I turned the light on. She wasn't there. That was the last time that I spent the weekend over there. I never told her about that, because I was afraid it would happen again. I don't know if that was a warning to save myself from something, or if that was just something just to scare me. I have no clue. At that time, my grandfather, he was still living. I could talk to him about anything. So when something like that would happen, he was able to tell me things. He was telling me that particular incident with the glowing eyes. There's someone trying to keep you away from her. There's something that's not right. I don't know what it was. I don't know if the mom was doing something. I don't know, because, like I said, she was there in the living room. But when I turned the light on, she was gone. I was doing DoorDash because I almost died last year. And I came home to like a $500 light bill. Being on a wound vac and trying to work is very bad, but I had to make money for my light bill. So my lights won't get cut off, because it was a summertime and in Texas. It's hot as hell here, like it prepares you for hell. I'm doing the DoorDash thing, right? I have my brother with me. My wife was with me, and she was in the front seat. He was in the back seat. I want to say we were in Roanoke, Texas. Because we do DoorDash, it takes you wherever. That's where the money is. That's where I'm gonna go. I had just dropped off at someone's house, and we were leaving to go back to civilization on this pitch black road. There was one street light way down, right before you gone into the highway. I saw this dark figure all in black. I want to say the figure was really tall and slender. It had no face. This one had no face. It was just a black void. If you will, it was just like contorting. Like the head was like the head, but had no face. Was moving around, contorting in the legs. My wife saw it also. We both looked at it. Like you see those horror movies where bones are cracking and stuff. That's what it was doing standing up. Walking, but contorted at the same time. When I passed it, it disappeared. I said, "Babe, did you see that she started praying her prayers?" I'm just so glad that I didn't have car trouble. I think my grandfather gave me, along with God, of course, the gift of dreams. Because I have dreams about things that are gonna happen. Some of the things that I've dreamt have happened, because it kind of feels like deja vu in a way. If I dream something, it's probably gonna happen, like within the next month or so. I guess the warning dreams, maybe premonition dreams look like that. I've always been very cautious. My grandfather, he always said, if you see something, something follows you. You just walk away. That was always a rule of thumb with us. If we see something, just walk away. Just pretend like it's not there. Pray it'll go away eventually. My grandfather, he raised me from 6 to 18, so I lived in the trailer park with him and my step-grandmother. That night we were having a Halloween party. It was late, we decided to go for a walk on the Trinity River Bridge. Now at that time they had blew up half of the bridge because they were repairing it. So there was like a giant space in between one end to the other. That night, we all decided to go out there. Chill out for a little bit. It was like midnight. Where the bridge is, it's woods on both sides. Like woods and the river. We're there, we hear something. We like, okay, we're leaving. We're going back. We started walking back, and all of a sudden, you hear rustling in the bushes again. Then it moves to the other side, and it goes back to the other side, and goes to the other side. We ran back to where the party was, 'cause, yeah. No, it was Halloween. It was the weekend. We were sitting outside in my friend's house, and all of a sudden, one of my other friend, like freaked out. He ran like he made a beeline to the bushes. He stayed in there for a little bit. Some other friend went to go get him. And something happened to him in those bushes. Because when my other friend had brought him out, he had to hold him up with his arm around his neck and hold him up and walk him back to the house. He had his head down while he was walking to the house. When he looked up at me, and only I saw it, he had the same red glowing eyes. Fast forward a few hours later, everything calms down. My friend's window curtains was open. I took a picture of the boys sitting in front of the window. Now when I took this picture, it was the 3 boys. And then for whatever reason, my friend had a digital clock that stopped working. Like it started blinking. It was blinking 11:34 upside down. 11:34 upside down spells. Hell. Okay, I take the picture. Everything's good. A few days later, I get to develop the pictures. That picture that I took of the 3 of them had the clock in the picture that said hill. And there was somebody's face in his window. The guy had been about 6'2". Adumuna. I don't know if it was somebody just being a peep, and Tom or what, but I know that when I looked in the lens. Taking the picture, there was nobody there but the 3 boys. A couple died in our house. It was an older couple. Now, I don't know if they are the ones that are haunting it. I'm pretty sure it's gotta be something more demonic. Because demonic growling. Seeing that big old shadow person in the door, that doesn't seem like peaceful to me. That's why it freaks me out. When there's an open door or an open window, and it's dark outside, like a closet, and all closets have to be closed, I will not sleep with a door open. It has to be closed, a window, especially at nighttime, needs to be closed. The curtains need to be drawn. I don't want to see outside, and I don't want nothing to see me inside. To share your own story with us, head on over to TrueScaryStory.com and fill out the form. And if you know of someone who might like this too, make sure you send it to them. To support our show and listen without ads, try out Scary Plus. It's free for 2 weeks and then $4.99 a month, and you can cancel whenever you want. It's over on scaryplus.com. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon.